Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Katie Halper Show. You may notice that this is not Nando, but he's a great guest. Nando had something come up. Anders Lee, a comedian and also the creator of the very good show Dummy.
Yes, that as well.
Yeah. And the one of the hosts of the podcast, Pod Damn America.
Mm-hmm. And Redacted Tonight on RT.
And latest thing is he's on Redacted Tonight. Very exciting with Lee Camp, the show with Lee Camp. So Anders, are you a DSA member, by the way?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Don't tell my employer, but yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's too right wing for Lee?
No, the higher ups. At RT. Well, officially we're not supposed to be in any parties, but DSA is not a party, so.
All right, there you go.
I have my way of weaseling my way out of it if it becomes an issue. But.
Nice. And everyone, as hi Brad and hi Kelly. As Brad points out, hit that like button, smash that like button. So Anders Lee, if you want to put your Twitter handle or anything else in your thingy, feel free to do that.
Sure.
But you know what? I can do it for you.
Okay, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
It's just at Anders Lee here on Twitter.
That's funny. It sounds like you could be saying it's just at Anders Lee here on Twitter, but it's Anders Lee here.
Yeah, like I live on Twitter, which is not too far from the truth.
So, Anders, I want to talk to you about the recent trend and totally not surprising trend and trend that has no basis in empirical fact and happens regardless of any outcome, but of the Democrats blaming their congressional House seat losses and Senate Senate losses on leftist socialists, things like, as James Clyburn says, socialized medicine, which we can't run on. And in fact, the Lincoln Project, great friends of the show, Rick Wilson, you're invited to come on anytime.
Could he not make it tonight? Was that
he couldn't make it tonight? No, he was getting drunk off of the beers that he keeps in his Confederate flag wrapped cooler, which says on it, "The South will rise again." Same thing. I'm also offering invites to David Frum. And of course, who else do we like? Who are the Never Trumpers? Oh, Bill Kristol, Jennifer Rubin. So everyone feel free to come.
Yeah. Well, show. David Frum has at least done Democracy Now!
Really? When?
Yeah. He debated during the primaries. He debated Bhaskar Sankara about Bernie versus Biden. And as they were taking off or taking a break between the debate segments, they played Iraqi music and made sure to say that it was Iraqi music.
That's really funny. Wow. That's a good move. I bet I know who did that at Democracy Now!, who was responsible to that, for that. But what are your observations about the recent, the latest results and DSA?
DSA
victories
did pretty well. I think I think the statistics we've gotten more data, more votes have been counted. But at one point it was 85% of our races were won. Now it might be down 75% or so. But yeah, that's it. I mean, in any election that's like a nationwide election, I think David Dayen was saying this, that there's no real way to, everyone's going to have their priors and confirm them. But the truth is, like, we can't, there's no like really subjective box that election results fit in at this level. That being said, centrists are definitely, ignoring reality and really making some things up about what happened. So we may as well come back just as stridently and say that, point out all the swing district Democrats who lost, who did not support Medicare for all, and all the ones who were victorious who did. And, I think we should not be afraid to go on the offensive against centrists, because their big claim to power for so long has been, but we're electable, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The money means we get stuff done. And I think we need to really reclaim both of those ideas. One, that it's more electable to run on, nothing other than not being a Republican. And two, that they're actually delivering concrete change, which they're not.
Yeah, I mean, and we do have some evidence. I mean, I'm not going to be quite as even-keeled and even-handed as as David Dayen, although I'm sure he's way more empirically based than I am. But I would just like to say, you know, as you pointed out, people who ran on Medicare for All won their races. 15, fight for 15, the $15 minimum wage won in Florida, while Trump also won that state. So I think we have enough evidence, but really what we know is that they have no evidence to prove it. So even if we're on we can just disprove what they say. Like they don't have, and like you have what's her name, Shalala, Donna Shalala, named after the Family Ties theme song. Just kidding, but she said, you know, centrists are winning
today. That song.
It was what?
The Shalala live for today.
Oh yeah.
I just did.
You're too old. You're too young for. You're too young for Family Ties, I think.
Yeah, but, maybe.
Anyway, and what else are you working on? Thinking about your podcast? Tell me other stuff that's happening.
Well, I'm thinking a lot about the next few months with Biden and how that transition is going to go. And I think, like, politically, at least, one thing that I'm really focused on and I guess I'm curious to see what your guests are having to say about this is focusing on the transition team and the cabinet picks, because personnel is policy, and I think there is a chance, and maybe I'm optimistic, it's sort of a disorder I have, but maybe there's a chance to force through some progressive picks and force Biden to do something, because unlike 2008, 2009, there's actually an organized left today that
yes,
it's going to at least try to make some demands. If they're successful is another story, but I think we at least got to try.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Pink says, you got to try and try and try.
I don't know that Pink one.
It's a good one.
Yeah?
Yeah. I can't remember what you gotta something and try and try and try,
but
I can't
better
remember.
Than the other try song I know, which is from Linkin Park, and that's I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end.
Oh, that's a terrible song. Yeah, you're right. Terrible song. Yeah. I do like, speaking of try songs though, Janis Joplin's song. Janis Joplin. What is wrong with me? Janis Joplin's song.
Is that like Janis Joplin and Janet Jackson fused into
exactly.
one?
Yeah.
Awesome.
She has a great song. Try just a little bit harder. I never know though.
Oh yeah.
I never know if that's like song refrains or song choruses are the titles. Sometimes they're really sneaky. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's like sort of a snobby move artists like to do, where they're like, no, don't know that. Yeah, I don't want you to just know this song for the chorus.
Right.
I want you to know it for Baba O'Reilly, who.
What about that? Why not Teenage Wasteland? Yeah. Are you really too good for Teenage Wasteland?
I guess so. I mean, it's everyone thinks they're above Teenage Wasteland, but nobody is.
Yeah, we're all below it, actually. Yeah. We're living in the Teenage Wasteland.
There we go.
And what else is going on? Let's see. What else is going on in the news? So we have a lot of left punching, which is based on non-data. Biden's on track to appoint, great people to his transition team. Not transition team as much as his cabinet, apparently. John Kasich won't shut up.
And there's, I think for labor, we were talking about this a little bit last night on Pod Damn America, but the prospective labor secretary who was acting labor secretary. What's that?
Oh, keep going. Sorry.
I'm forgetting his name, but he is the guy who orchestrated Prop 22, basically.
Oh, yeah, that's a great proposition, by the way, which is now reality. And as Nando explained last time, it's like actually going to be very difficult to overturn. And shout out to Kamala Harris's brother-in-law for working on that. And I was afraid you were going to say Bernie was going to be labor. No, there's a rumor. I shouldn't do it.
Apparently, I don't want him to do it. Gunning for it, but my theory with that, my theory is that he knows he's not going to get it, so he's just making sure they don't choose like the worst possible choice.
I see. He's like shifting it left to drag the whole thing. Got it.
That's my theory, but maybe
that's a good theory. Original. Yeah. Well, we can't let him do it. Remember that tweet that went viral? What was it? Bernie stay home, when he was like running around the country risking COVID for the guy who said, I'm the guy who beat the socialist.
Right. And the guy who sent people to their death in Wisconsin and Illinois.
Yes. Yes, and where was and Ohio or tried to. Again, I'll never forget Simone Sanders saying on CNN that the CDC had told folks. No, the CDC said it was safe for folks to vote, and they had absolutely not said that. In fact, they said that people shouldn't gather in groups of larger than, I believe, 50. It was whatever it was. It was as not the sharpest, usually the sharpest crayon in the box, but the dear Chris Cuomo pointed out that that's virtually every voting site, polling place. But yes, so he is, looks like he's going to be the president. And I was very, unmoved by his speech, by Kamala's speech, and don't remember a thing about it except for finding it really boring and uninspiring and canned and corny.
Pretty light on things that they will do in the White House.
A lot of decency, though. Decency's on its way back. You can count on decency.
Were they able to restore the soul yet, or do they have to?
I think the soul. They got to get in there. They got to do some CPR. I think they have to use those shockers, whatever they call it. Put those on the soul of America, soul of the nation, to get it back.
Okay, hopefully Mitch McConnell won't block it. But we'll see.
Mitch McConnell is such a soulful man. I think it'll be hard for him to block it.
He has collected a lot of souls in his day.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. I love these people who are thinking that they're going to get stuff done. Now that Trump is out of office, there's going to be real, co-working between McConnell and Biden. But let's bring in the guests because I think everyone's excited to hear from them. But before doing that, I just want to give a shout out and a thank you to Murphy, who for his very generous super chat. He does manage to get my name right on the first try. I find it touching that people like the show enough that they watch it even though they don't remember how my name is spelled. I see that as a major sign of loyalty.
He did the right way and then the wrong way?
Yeah, right. But last time he had done the wrong way, and so I didn't chide him. I encouraged him to not do it that way. So
I see. That's actually a common occurrence in speech IRL with my name is people will meet me and they'll get it. This is, a minor complaint compared to other people's names, but people will call me Anders as it's pronounced. Yeah. And then somewhere along the line in 2 months, they'll just start calling me Anders out of nowhere.
Oh, weird.
They just stick that way for the rest of our relationship.
That's like overcompensating. Like when people call Chavez Chavez. It's it's not. It's just Chavez. You can say Chavez in a Spanish accent, but it doesn't change the CH sound or which syllable is accented. Anyway, so again, thank you, Murphy. And what Murphy wrote, by the way, is thank you, Katie, K-I-T-I-E, and then K-A-T-Y. I don't fracking know, all right? So good, getting in some criticism of fracking, much deserved. So let's bring in our guests, if they're ready. Can you guys give the thumbs up if you're ready? Okay, that was so in sync. That was great. That's some as Jane calls it, human solidarity. So we're going to bring in Jane McAlevey and Adolph Reed. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good, you?
Good.
And I've had Jane on my podcast, but this is her debut on the live stream. Adolph has appeared on the live stream before, and this is Jane's latest book, A Collective Bargain, Unions Organizing and the Fight for Democracy, which is great. And you guys are both, and this is Anders.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. I think I actually have family connections to both of you, as coincidentally as that is. My cousin, Katie Rader, was a student of Professor Reed's at UPenn.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Katie's your cousin, my lord.
Yeah. And my sister used to work at Blue Mountain Center, where I think Jane did some writing. Is that correct? Hannah Lee was her name. I think you might be on mute.
We can't hear you, Jane. Unmute. Yes. Yeah. Okay. There, you're good.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. It.
Yeah. Blue Mountain Center. Yeah, it's a great place to work on books, by the way. For those who like to write, Blue Mountain Center is a great place to go hang out and write books.
That's good.
Maybe for those who don't like to write, is it so conducive that it'll motivate you?
I should reframe that. It's actually better said that way, Katie. For people like me who don't identify as an author or a writer at any level, it's a good place to get stuck in silence and be forced to write. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome.
And it's a great place to go if you have a relative who works there who can get you free food and fun on the lake there.
And this episode of the Katie Halper Show is sponsored by Blue Mountain. It's not, but it could be. So I'm really excited to have both of you on because you both have really interesting, overlapping, but also different perspectives and backgrounds, but very relevant, applicable to the moment. I wanted to, let's start with the question of what insights you guys have into the election results. And then we'll get into the more exciting stuff, which is what can be done.
I'll defer to Jane. I don't have insights.
What'd you say? Sorry.
Oh, I said I'll defer to Jane.
Oh, okay.
I don't have insights.
Well, you had, I mean, can we, not to put you on the spot, but you and Cornell West had a great, I think, chat that looked at the demographic results.
Yeah. Well, yeah, look, all right, so Biden won, and from the looks of things, it was the battle of the turnouts, and the Democrats won the turnout battle, and I would say also on behalf of like everyone in Southeast Pennsylvania, you're welcome. But the big story there was like the union turnout. I mean, the Sunday before the election, Unite Here, which had more than 500 people in the city, actually knocked on a door per second, which is extraordinary. And like other unions were out like that too. So that's where the turnout came from. But I don't think that we, learned anything from the election that we didn't know before. Not even that the mainstream Dems, the DLC types are going to react the way they did, the way they have since the Democratic Leadership Council was formed in 1935, right? The lesson from every election, win, lose, or draw, is that you got to move farther to the right. And keep rechristening the same imaginary constituency every 4 years. It's soccer moms, it's national security moms, it's suburban middle-class women, like whatever the hell it is, right? I mean, this time around. We knew before the election, Biden told us, right, from the day that he announced that that the two things that he had going for him was that were that A, he was close to Obama, and A prime, he was close to Obama, and B, that he was bipartisan guy. So by, I don't know, by like April, by March, I started calling it, National Salvation Council government, right, that we have under Biden, because that's kind of what it looks like, right? I mean, so that's not a surprise.
Right.
Kamala Harris is not a surprise, but what is kind of striking is the extent to which what a friend of mine who is happy for me to use the neologism, but made me swear on pain of death that I wouldn't disclose him as a creator. But a friend of mine calls McWokeism, right?
Oh, I like that. McWokeism?
Yes.
I like that.
Is the battering ram that the right-wing Democrats are using to beat back the left. And that was true in 2016 too. It's been true ever since. But so now it's time for us, if we're going to be serious about this, to have a real conversation about the extent to which what's purported to be an agenda or the agenda for racial justice in America now is not necessarily compatible with the left agenda, and it may be more than incompatible, right? Like it may be fundamentally antagonistic, right? And that's something that we're going to have to deal with, right, over the next 3 or 4 years, if we have 3 or 4 years. Like in addition, again, and this is what some of us have been saying for 30 years now, is to try to stop treating the left like it's a fucking frat, and figure out ways to talk to people who don't already agree with us, and more important than that, to listen to people who don't already agree with us, and that's something else that we can glean from the electoral results, right? That the Trump vote expanded, and a whole lot of those people shouldn't have been voting for Trump, right? And and some of us, I think everybody on this panel knows why they voted for Trump and why they shouldn't have been voting for Trump. And I'll say this to end my first rant of the evening, that we got to finally also stop thinking about the wrong constituency, right? Like a famous organizer once made a distinction between mobilizing, which is basically going to your extant constituency and moving them to do stuff, and organizing, which is building a constituency that you don't have. That's the most important distinction that whatever this thing is that occupies the cultural space that a left would occupy if there were one in the U.S. has been missing for 40 years now, right? I mean and it's amazing, but there are all kinds of entailments, right, that follow from that, practical entailments. For instance, stop paying attention to the New York Times and MSNBC, right? Those people aren't on our side. They've never been on our side. That there are enemies, trying to win them over is no victory. And I know there's a temptation to think that using the corporate media as a platform can be a shortcut to movement building, but it's not. It's just the opposite, right? Because they are not. They're in no way a neutral apparatus. And like this is another, line. And I'll admit to my own sort of crotchety sectarianism, which I assume that you must have gotten some of, Katie, because I keep bumping into people who went to lefty camp with you.
Wow, exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. But they're the enemy's organs, right? And I know people get impatient and they say, well, the danger of fascism is so great that we don't have time to think about that kind of organizing anymore. And it's truer now than it's ever been. But my response is always the same. Well, one of the reasons that the danger is so damn great is that we haven't been doing this work over the last 40 years. So, all right, let me stop there and pass the baton to my comrade.
Really quickly, before we hear from this famous organizer who emphasizes the difference between organizing and mobilizing, lo and behold, she's in the room. And also, lo and behold, you just said no shortcut. There's no shortcut. They think it's a
I know. I heard that.
Right?
We should like raise money for some cause every time someone says that.
Yeah, another, which is the book where you really delve into the organizing versus mobilizing. But really quickly, before we move on to that, and also collective bargain, Adolph, could you just expand on? You said you think everyone knows this, but just in case some people don't. Also, I like your turn of phrase. You famously I don't know if it was on this show that you christened it, but you definitely said it, that your slogan for a bumper sticker for Harris Biden was Biden Harris, because sometimes you gotta clean the damn toilet.
Right.
So given your
pointed on you.
So given that your wonderful turn of phrase, how would you articulate why people who shouldn't have voted for Trump voted for Trump?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of reasons, right? I mean, and like some of us are talking over the last couple of days, and some of James and my mutual comrades about how to parse the phenomenon of Trump having done so much better among Black voters and among Hispanic voters than he did in 2016. And the reasons are complex. I mean, not the least of which is that there's no such thing as Hispanic voters, but of course another one is there's no such thing as the Black voter either. So, and
there's no such thing as the left Democrats.
No, right.
Yeah.
Right.
But we'll get back to that because it is such a juicy discussion. But
so I answer the question directly. Well, look. I mean, the Democrat in the 2004 election, like my son had just moved out to the central Midwest a couple of years earlier, and his quip was that either in places like Ohio and Michigan and Indiana, either what's his name, Kerry?
Yeah, John Kerry
talks about NAFTA, or Bush is going to talk about gay marriage, and that's just kind of what it comes down to, and that's what it's come down to since Clinton, right?
That's a good
or longer. I mean, I point out to people all the time that that Jimmy Carter was a warm-up act for Reagan, but actually you can roll it back to the Kennedy administration, because that's when among the Democrats the sort of tension back and forth over the first decade after World War II, a decade and a half, was over how much of economic policy was going to be tied to a commitment to full employment and growth versus how much is going to be tied to currency stability. And it's the Kennedy administration that actually forms, the zygote of what would later be, come out of the womb as neoliberalism.
I've never been so glad to be pro-choice in my life.
But anyway, yeah. So, wage stagnation, right? And I mean, declining standard of living, right? And economic insecurity on all levels, right? And it's gotten worse and worse. It's funny, like during the campaign, the Sanders campaign, the press people had this trope that they liked about how young people could see Bernie and tell he was genuine and he was connecting with people and was honest. And, a lot of the surrogates got into that shit too. But I point out, look, when we go to these campus rallies, and once again, campus and young people are not coterminous. But when we go to the campus rallies, even what got responses from students was, debt cancellation, sure, free tuition, sure, but Medicare for all and a $15 an hour minimum wage. Because if we talk about 40 years of wage stagnation, well, guess who's holding the really nasty end of the stick right now, right? It's 18 to 35-year-olds. So it's only reasonable, right? It's as reasonable for a 20-year-old barista to get jacked up about a soft but convincing social democrat like Bernie Sanders as it was for that person's grandparents or great grandparents to sit down in Flint, because it's the same dynamics, it's the same process.
And one of the big differences is that the corporate media is that younger people have, access to alternative media. And if you're an older person, generalizing, all you have is, like, if you're a Dem, all you have is MSNBC.
Right.
Right. I'm kind of curious, Adolph, to get your response to this sort of idea that's been popularized by people like Eric Levitz, that the left needs to do a better job of appealing to quote unquote Patagonia Democrats.
Can I just be a kind of an authoritarian feminist and say, let's pause that for a second, because I just want to bring in Jane, but then we'll go back to the Patagonia question. Okay. Sorry to redirect. I just really want to.
Authoritarian feminism. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to have a discussion about that.
I just came up with it off the top of my head. So
it sounds better than other forms of feminism.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's not the highest ideal, but it does.
Right.
It could
gets the job done.
I'll take that a lot more seriously
than neoliberal feminism.
I'm a lot more likely to shut up if that's on the table.
But also, by the way, it's a pleasure to basically come onto your show to listen to Adolph. So that's always a good thing too, besides listening to Katie and to Anders. But
And I didn't mean to cut this part off. I just want to make, sure. And then we'll go back to that. So Jane, I have a lot of questions for you, but also, do you have anything you want to say in response?
Not in response. I mean, I think
or not in response, but answering the same the question of the turnout, what happened, what the hell happened. Yeah.
First of all, can we just do away with pollsters? I want to start.
Yeah, sure.
I've been on a pollster thing for a long time, and I'm sticking with it. Meaning, I feel like I was really early to the cause of the idea that pollsters were way overblown and way over important. Some of the highest paid consultants doing some of the least relevant work. So I think I said that in my first book, second book, and third book, and I said it a lot longer than that even, because when I was still working at a, sort of national level at SEIU, there's a lot of polling done. So I had to work with a lot of pollsters. And I have to tell you that the amount of money, this is what my first, itch with pollsters began with watching how much money we spend on them.
Right.
When actually, if you plowed that amount of money into a bunch of organizers, first of all, we have a better read on actually what people are thinking because we're engaging with them. Second of all, we have tighter methods called structure tests, like this whole concept of how you know how someone really feels about something is, are they willing to take some action around it, right? Which is different than like answering your phone.
Right.
So, and then again, like the money was sort of this extraordinary thing. So there was, in No Shortcuts in that second book, I'm sort of touching on the transition away from unions having a lot of organizers to unions replacing them with pollsters. And that's part of why we're in the situation that we're in right now. So it's not, the pollster problem is not just that they blew the last 2 elections. It's also that their use by national organizations has literally replaced frontline organizers who otherwise spend a lot of time in a serious engagement that's two-way. And where when someone says, something racist or whatever it is, like when someone says something that's, challenging, let's say challenging, steeped in the social conditions from which they're raised. Unlike a pollster, I'm going to actually engage with that person around that topic. And I'm going to actually move to persuasion. So the dollar for dollar value around refielding the country with real organizers and like taking a lot of money back from the whole pollster world. So anyway, that's one thing I want to say is that I just want to say the word pollster because it's making me crazy in terms of the use of resources and what people think they learn from it. The second thing, though, that relates to the sort of the looking backward versus forward. I like the forward. I like to talk about, so what do we do now? But the other thing, and they're related, but the other thing is, I don't think we sort of can make definitive conclusions yet, like deep ones about the voting patterns, because we don't know yet. Like the votes aren't even counted everywhere, right? So I think there's what Adolph said, I agree with, right? The aggregate, the big stuff, but there's some deeper stuff that will be interesting to get into, and we probably can't do it till like January. But we know that, we know everything that you guys said already. And then the thing to add to it is just the lack of organizers is concurrent, right? The replacement with pollsters as a strategy, literally, like in the field, goes along with the whole shift away from sort of radical, and not even radical, like it's almost the wrong word, like fundamentally basic political education that needs to be done inside the House of Labor, which, it's not happening. A lot of organizations, a lot of unions are scared of engaging in hard conversations with their base. And that is, that's unnerving, for an organizer, because in fact, to what Adolph was saying, I pretty much spend my life waking up in the morning trying to identify on a wall chart which workers aren't talking to us. And that's who I'm going to go talk to for the whole day, right? Like it's that focus is what organizers do. We engage in really hard conversations all the time, like regularly. If we want to win a hard-fought election, we're going to spend almost all of our time engaging with workers who don't think initially that they're for the union or for the strike or for the collective action. They're deeply embedded in, a sense of individualism has gotten into their head, and maybe more than that. And the challenge for us in this work is if both sides are getting better at mobilizing, right, which they are, right, the forces of Trump turned out a hell of a lot more people, and the quote unquote Democrats turned out a hell of a lot more people. So the problem is it's still really, really close. And if we don't do far more actual organizing and spend our time having really hard conversations that most organizers I know love having on a daily basis, because it's satisfying, right? When you conclude a conversation like that and you realize someone's actually thinking differently, then we're going to keep having this, ridiculously close country. I don't actually think, yes, it's a racist country. Yes, there's misogyny, all that stuff, but I don't actually think it is as close on the issues, right? 80 million people sat out the election. Like, what were those 80 million people thinking, and why didn't they vote? Like, I'm really interested in the 80 million who are not in the 71 or 75 million number yet. Right. And that's where we should be focusing our energy.
I also realized that I forgot, because you guys are such celebrities, but for the few people watching who may not know who you are, Adolph Reed is a scholar, professor emeritus at Penn, and the founder of one of the founders of nonsite.org. No site?
Well, no,
not a founder. like Pictionary.
I'm on the board. Yeah, I'm on the
You're on the board. Okay. Well, I associate you with that site. Okay. So, and that's of course, fine. I'm giving a Katie centric definition, so I shouldn't do that. But one of the big contributors, right there. And Jane is also a scholar and a labor organizer and an author. So very excited. I have so many more questions for you guys. But Anders, take it away.
Well, yeah. I'm curious. You're talking about Jane was talking about organizers being replaced with pollsters, and do you think there are like structural incentives for that? I mean, I think it's pretty clear with the Democratic Party that it's better for if you're a consultant to hire pollsters and to cut ads, you get a better overhead. But is that sort of starting to bleed over into union leadership too, in your experience?
Well, it's not starting to bleed.
Okay.
We're bleeding out. You know what I mean? It's very, very, it's very deep. And even now when I still work every single day with workers and unions. So it's like, if I'm working with a group of workers and unions, and I say to people, if I ask a question like, what do you think your members are thinking about Prop 22, or a tax ballot initiative or whatever? And they'll say, oh, well, we have an engagement program. That's a big buzzword right now, is the word engagement. It's like, if I hear that word one more time, I'm going to put my head in the oven. It's like, we've got an engagement program. And I'm like, okay, that's a big new word. The pollsters must have come up with it. So I'm like, what's an engagement program? And they'll be like, well, we've engaged the members around this question. I'm like, oh, that's great. Okay. So how did you engage the members around the question of the ballot initiative? And they'll say, well, we dropped a survey in the field and asked a lot of questions. And I'm like, okay, I have to keep clarifying. Like, you dropped a survey in the field. That's like a one way. No, we did it really good. Like, you could write back and you could type in and I'm like, that's just bullshit in terms of moving a serious program. So when I was at SEI, I'll give you one concrete example. So it's 2006 in Nevada, and I'm the executive director of the statewide union, SEIU at the time, in Nevada, which we would, by the way, flip, blue that year for the first time in a bunch of years. But anyway, I mean, in 2008. But so it's 2006. We've done a huge rebuild of the union. We went from like this dead, small C kind of corrupt, small B bankrupt-ish, just bad local. We've rebuilt it. It's this fighting mad organization. We've organized thousands of new workers, and we've rebuilt, the internal side of the union that existed. And so I reported to some whatever structure in the hierarchy that we were going to run a huge dues increase. And I mean a big one, like triple the dues, meaning the amount of money that each worker is going to pay out of their paycheck. And it's a right to work state. And so I get this phone call from headquarters and they say, you can't run a dues increase. So this is like the most counterintuitive thing you could possibly imagine, right? So I said, okay, first of all, you can't actually stop us, right? We have a local constitution. So we're going to run a dues increase because we actually wanted to be financially liberated from the headquarters, right? We were like getting subsidies and stuff. So we were like, actually, we're going to run it because my people in the organization said the first thing you got to do, McAlevey, as soon as it's safe, is like run a dues increase to get independent from headquarters. So we were going to run a huge dues increase to get independent of the national subsidies. And because it was the right thing to do, because we had a hell of a fight coming in front of us. We had a war coming in 2006 in the union, and we needed more resources. And I didn't want to have to constantly negotiate with Dennis Rivera, who was a key leader in the healthcare sector, about the terms of what an additional subsidy was going to be, right? There's really deep stuff. So anyway, fast forward. So they're like, how do you know you're ready? And I'm like, well, I know we're ready because the dues paying membership is already at 88% in a right to work state. Like, people are feeling really great about the organization. And we know it from the ratification votes. We know it from our turnout at every strategic function in the union. And they said, we're going to drop a poll. That's all the lingo, right? We're going to drop a poll to make sure it's okay. And I was literally going back to the local executive board and my organizing staff and blowing my brains out over this conversation. But I was like, fine, that's cool. You want to run a poll, waste your money on something that we already know from turnout at ratification votes, from unionization. There's all these metrics that are evidence-based when you're an organizer in the field. So anyway, they dropped the poll. It was $120,000. They survey sampled, I think, 300 people, so 300 conversations, in excess of $100,000 of money to a consultant firm, who reported back that they had never in their life gotten a response that was like, I forget the number, I say it in Raising Expectations, but it was like, 80% of the members were ready to vote to seriously increase their dues in the union, because the whole conversation we were having about dues was not about dues. It was about, do you want to kick your boss's ass, save your pension, and win? Mm-hmm. Right? That's the framing of the question. And people were like ready for it. Anyway, so we wasted all this money on a poll that confirmed what we already knew.
That's better than what you said. And that's better what often happens, which is that the poll doesn't even reflect popular will, right? Because you have a self-selecting population that's responding to it, right? Or, they're often weaponized polls to maintain the status quo. Because if you poll people at the beginning of someone's campaign and the person isn't well known, then of course you use that to say the person isn't viable.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But to Andrew's point, one is it's being replaced for several reasons, and that was a mind-blowing thing for me to realize, that getting off of the subsidy and becoming independent was actually a challenge, right, to leadership in some ways. It meant less control over how we spent money, and then secondly, and of course we did win that dues increase, right? It was huge. We suddenly had like triple the money we had. Anyway, the workers, had a lot of money to fight, and then we won. So, the boss fights we had, we then won. But the other thing, obviously, is that when you have really good organizing going on in the field, that has its own set of threats, right? So, and pollsters don't do that. So,
and that's perplexing to me about that they would do that with Prop 22. Like, is that the implication there then, that if the result of the poll had been like the workers were kind of okay with Prop 22 or not that invested in it, then the union wouldn't have opposed it?
No. And this wasn't about Prop 22. It was about Prop 15. It was about the ballot.
Okay.
I think, and officially, by the way, the unions here did, in California, the unions did, I think, politically did an amazing job on, they tried hard. I think the pandemic really got in the way. But I think that one thing that is true about unions in California is that by and large, people had very good positions on 22, very good positions on trying to eliminate the corporate loophole from Prop 13 in the Prop 15 campaign. And I think, we could talk about that separately, but I think the pandemic was very damning, because the number one population that we were relying on, the two populations that we were going to rely on to campaign around breaking Proposition 13 historically, in what was now called Proposition 15, and it was just officially declared that we couldn't overcome the defeat today. That teachers and schools and education, and then our access to parents, was like the central strategy. And of course, all the schools closed in March. So in some ways, the base of operation of the theory of the campaign got fundamentally challenged in the end. And that was really problematic.
And in terms of moving forward, something that I find, I guess I should be over it. I don't know why I'm surprised, because it's such an established take. And you referred to this earlier, Jane, when you talked about how you think it's not as close of a country. And, there is homophobia, there is racism, there is sexism. And yet something I hear a lot is that you can't organize around class or labor because people are racist, which is like, that's why you have to organize around class and labor, like precisely because it's one of the things that you can challenge that identity or that community building with. Has that always been around, that idea? I feel like in the olden days, they would just like play to racism, but they wouldn't pretend that, no one pretended that because of that, you couldn't play to class.
Well, if I can jump in,
of course. Right.
I've been arguing for a while now that, and we've really seen this, more strikingly over the last 4 or 5 years, that anti-racism is coming to play the same kind of role in American politics in taking class off the political agenda that racism played right until the mid 1960s. And my comrade, I'm Willie Leggett in South Carolina, actually about a couple of years ago, right, found passages in V.O. Key's classic 1949 volume Southern politics in state and nation, in which Key lays out, like in 3 or 4 paragraphs, precisely the role that race played in politics of South Carolina at the end of the 1940s. We just took it and with minor adaptations, just changing a word or two here or there, could say the same thing about the role that race plays in South Carolina politics now. Except the difference is that blacks have the vote. Democrats, as much as Republicans, are committed to race being the only significant fault line in the state's politics. And it's kind of interesting seeing, the rest of the country become South Carolina now, basically, because, and I wonder, well, almost on a daily basis, I mean, that how much evidence is going to have to be accumulated that what we understand to be anti-racist politics is boldly and explicitly and openly a class politics of its own, right? How many special alphabet categories are we going to have for fucking Ava DuVernay, right? But before people start to recognize that that's what's going on here, right? So we've got the idea of a black political agenda, for instance, that's got like a sort of populist throwaway issue or populist seeming throwaway issue with the criminal justice stuff, right? Which what I was just I mentioned to somebody a couple of days ago, like a defunder, that polls show that most Black Americans and most Hispanic Americans want police because, as my son was saying, like all you got to do, well, if you own a TV and a car, like you want to have someone pick up on the other end when you dial 911, right? I mean, that's as simple as it is. And not to mention that going back to the 90s, part of the justification for the crackdown on crime was demands coming from economically marginal Black and Hispanic communities, where people, like you could see, they were calling in an airstrike on themselves, which does not end very well, but you only do it out of desperation, right? But there's that, right? That's the stop, because everybody understands it on some level, just like there's not going to be any damn reparations, there's not going to be any prison abolition or police abolition either. But what there is, on the other hand, is a lot of money going into the Black bourgeoisie, right? I mean, after George Floyd was killed, we counted up like a handful of the most, a couple of handful of the most repugnant corporations in America: Uber, Amazon, Walmart, ALEC even, right? Came on support of Black Lives Matter. Kimberly Crenshaw, the crown priestess of the idea of intersectionality, said, as a rebuke to the left, right, that corporate CEOs are more in touch with the needs of African Americans than the left is, because for her and others in that class, the African American interests don't include stuff like healthcare, right? Well, it's only disparities, and that's another marker of they're having a class agenda. So again, I mean, to be honest, like see at this point, and this is like, a virtue or a curse of being old and tired. But at this point, when somebody presents that to me as a claim, right, that you can't organize around class issues, my first response is to say, I catch it most of the time, is, well, go fuck yourself then, because that's just because it's just not true.
Yeah, right? That's a good answer.
And I mean, most people who make that argument are, well, look, like it depends. So between 2016 or 2015 and 2020, there had been the case earlier too, but the working class got completely redefined by race and gender, right? So the working class is white men. And the working class, therefore, by definition, is racist and sexist and transphobic and homophobic and bigoted white men. So by definition, and this is what Joanne Reed and the rest of the MSNBC crowd were doing, and also the Black political class. It got to the point after the 2016 election where if you propose something like Medicare for all, or like any social wage policy that's broadly redistributed downwardly, then that was automatically taken or castigated as showing that you wanted to cater to the racist white working class. It's a good game if you can run it, but see, here's the problem, right? I'll shut up after this. The problem is that everybody alive today, and the older they are, the more likely it is to be the case. So, like my cohort has it worse than anybody else. And people who are my senior, the handful of them who are left, have it still worse than we do. But it all came up during a time when it was reasonable to assume that a racial justice agenda or the social movement agenda was an intrinsically left agenda, and that's partly because for a period there, through the mid 30s through the mid 60s. The aspirations of all those movements kind of rode together and converged, and biographically, right, the same people were involved in them, and kind of ironically, one of the reasons that it has been natural to think of the racial justice agenda as a left agenda is because for a good generation, the only people, right, outside the effective communities who supported those movements' agenda were actual leftists, right?
Right.
But just because they ran parallel tightly for a couple of generations doesn't mean that there's anything that's necessarily left about the racial justice agenda. For instance, I think I may have mentioned this on your show last time too, but Preston Smith, a political scientist in Mount Holyoke, has been arguing for a while very quite powerfully that from the mid-30s forward, you could see like two distinct normative nodes in Black American activist politics. One converged around an ideal that he describes as racial democracy, which just boils down to radical application of equal opportunity, right? And its ideal is that that we'll know that we have a just society when Blacks are represented, más o menos, in proportion to their overall of the percentage of the population at the top and the bottom and all points in between. The other norm that fired Black mass politics was the social democratic norm, and like everybody understood, right? Like even sort of conservative Black voices, right? Like in the mid and late 40s, that among the conditions that were necessary, or that would be necessary, and were necessary and would remain that way for continued Black advancement after World War II, were continued expansion of social wage policy and expansion of the CIO, right? Because people weren't stupid, right? But this is also a time when people actually, one of your campmates, who's my advisee, in a seminar, was leading a report or a class discussion in a grad course on a bunch of readings from Black political and intellectual types mid-30s, mid-40s, and she began just by observing, right? I mean, not making. She was a little bemused about it, but by observing that nobody talked about combating racism. Ralph Bunche, A. Philip Randolph, Willard Townsend, people talked about policies and programs and initiatives that they were for, and policies, programs, and initiatives that they were opposed to, right? And so, from that sense, like the struggle against a generic racism is also a product of the last 30, 40 years, right? And it's a direct product of the consolidation of bipartisan Reaganism that makes it impossible to fight for anything else, right? And it's important to keep in mind that the Black political and managerial class congeals, right, and evolves precisely in the context of that transformation, and has been an active node in the transformation. So I forget where we started now. Like I've taken.
It was my question about why people present. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And Jane, and Jane, you talked about this. I just listened to you on. I heard your Rumble interview with Michael Moore, and this issue also came up.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of why I was interested in, hanging out with Adolph. I feel like I keep thinking we need to write something about this, but instead we're chatting tonight. But it's like
First step.
We're working on the outline now. But I mean, to me,
is this a shortcut to the?
No. This is a long form cut.
Okay.
I'm kidding. But I mean, as you know, as a union organizer, to me, I have like 28 years of stories of helping someone with what we might consider to be, racist and sexist. Let's just start there. Could be anti-queer, whatever it is, like challenging views. Go through a union campaign that's a hard fought, well run campaign, and then this is important. Then go through a hard-fought contract campaign, which is where the policy mechanism comes in, right? That's the policy tool. Like, what policies do we want to change with this employer in the workplace? So we get two chances, and then every unionization campaign, every contract fight, every strike vote, all these things that are real and hard, where there's real opposition, and they are plying the tool of race and gender at us in the campaign. Like, it doesn't generally work, because in fact, when you can bottom line a conversation with a worker, that's what are the three things you want to change at work tomorrow? Like that's the opening question. Like in every conversation I've had for whatever, 20, 30, I'm getting too old, years. Like, if you could change three things at work tomorrow, what would they be? If that's my opening conversation with a Filipina, a Black person, a Latina, a Latinx, a queer, a fill in the blank, then I'm not going to ask, well, what do queer people want in the workplace today? I'm going to ask a worker who's a worker, if you could change three things at work tomorrow, what would they be? Because in fact, every worker has an answer to that. And if I'm holding from the three things that worker wants to change, the next part of the conversation, step 4 in a 6-step conversation, the next, like we frame the choice about what it's going to take to win that. So if someone says to me, I don't want to lose the pension and get a 401k because the boss is threatening a takeaway on a pension, and they want to, make them all go into some crappy 401k or 2-tier, meaning people who don't know what that means, like every new hire is going to get a worse contract than the sitting workers, right? Which is typical divide and conquer. Also, the conversation continues in a way where you say, look, the truth is, in order for you to save the pension and stop it from converting to a 401k, it's going to take like 90% unity. So it's going to take like because it's a power equation, right? And then you begin to get into a conversation about capitalism and a power equation with the worker, and you're not talking about capitalism, but you are talking about a power equation in a pretty simple way, because you're going to ask the worker, well, the employer is really dead set on taking that pension away. So what do you think it's going to take actually for you and your coworkers? What kind of actions do you think you and your coworkers might have to take collectively to actually stop the employer from doing that? And in that conversation, we're unpacking, I'm talking to a white nurse who's saying, I wish the Filipinos would stop speaking in Tagalog. And you're talking to, I can make all these stereotypes that are really real. And the point is, at the end of it, I always say, like, then we're getting to a strike vote, and the white nurse will be like, well, the Filipinos aren't going to vote to strike for the pension because they're going to get sent back to the Philippines. I mean, this is like, my ears are filled with this stuff. And then if I look at them and I say, look, the truth is, for any one of you to win on any issue that matters, y'all going to have to put your shit aside and get it together here. Right. And we're going to get into a really healthy conversation about what that means and why is the employer plying you using racism and the language you speak and the color you are and the status you have to try and stop you from making radical fundamental change to win the things you deserve. Like, that basic conversation leads to the most effective anti-racism work I've ever witnessed, and anti-sexism and anti-fill in the blank. It's like peeling back the onion layer, which gets to the root of what the problem here is, which is we got a political elite that's trying to kill every worker who's not them in this world at this point, not just this country. So, I think there is a part of the historic, like, white male sectarian straight, I'm making some weird categories, but like there is some weird history where, I've been in rooms where people are like, we shouldn't even talk about race. We shouldn't even talk about, that's like a fraction of like a flea on an elephant. You know what I mean? It's like, that isn't real. And it's stupid if you say that, right? But it's like, you can't deal with race or gender or other isms unless you're dealing with it through the prism of class. Right. Because that's how we're actually going to help someone come to the realization that actually you and I are not the issue. Actually, the problem is not you and I and what we think of each other. It's these assholes who are shareholders and vulture capitalists who are trying to take something away from every single one of you. So why do you think that is? Like, that's the nature of a beautiful, fun, great, hard organizing conversation. And I've written 3 books of stories already. I could just keep writing them, like, about how many minds have been transformed about maybe Tagalog isn't the problem. And maybe the Filipino nurse isn't the problem, thanks to the white nurse at the end of that campaign. And in fact, they've built deep, lasting, fundamental solidarity and now have a platform to discuss those weird tensions that they sometimes have, which are rooted in their sort of social upbringing. And they work through them, because if you want to win some serious material conditions and change in your life, you got to work it through or you can't win. And so, this discussion makes me batshit crazy in real life all the time.
Yeah.
Do you think, though, like looking back through the history of the left and, fighting racist organizing, whether it's like the Ku Klux Klan or the American Nazi Party, that there are things we can learn today about, like, disrupting fascist organizing, not to, be too alarmist, but, is that something we should totally abandon? Because, it seems like in a lot of cases, the left or the liberals can sort of latch onto those things and organize people on those lines without any class orientation. And if we were able to do that with the class orientation, that would make things stronger. Is there any validity to that?
Well, I don't know. Look, like, on the one hand, and I know this isn't what you're asking, but on the one hand, like, I've been kind of not even bemused, maybe a little amused about what I've seen to be like a tendency among sort of earnest, DSA types in particular, to want to look to the past for, like, Shoutout, for instance, that can help to inform how we should think about the circumstances that we face now, the challenges that we face now. And it tickles me for a couple of reasons. One is that, like, when I came into the left as a young person, Kautsky and his figures in the Second International were trash, basically. So something changed, but that's just a biographical thing.
I think the vast majority of socialists today are still not Kautsky's fans, but there definitely are some scholars there.
But
and I've never heard a worker in a campaign say Kautsky, just for the record.
No, exactly.
They're like complaining, they're like, we don't like that the Filipino women are speaking Tagalog, and we also don't like the obsession with Kautsky. So we've got to fight against both of those things.
Yeah.
I'm not going to participate in the strike vote because Kautsky's not on the ballot. That is not what happens. Okay, I'm sorry. Back to you.
But the thing is that that's so people, like, call that learning from history, right? I call it going to the past looking for parables. And that sort of gets in the way. Like, I mentioned Kautsky in particular, and that's just because I'm not crazy about Kautsky. But
Kautsky folk.
Because everything about the world we live in now, right? And everything, every conceivable thing, right? About political institutions, life in general, world markets, et cetera, presumes that the world that Kautsky lived in and commented on and tried to operate in has been obliterated completely. right, off the face of the earth. So it doesn't bring anything to us. But by the same token, and look, I'm as inclined to the temptation to duck into the bullet of fascism as like anybody else is, right? I mean, I've been a student of fascism in the 20s and 30s, partly because I grew up as a red diaper baby here, right? But the conditions aren't the same, right? So, and then I go back to point number one, which is that there is no left, right? There's no institutional left in the U.S. So the institutional left can't do anything about the fascist threat now because it doesn't exist. And this is like a frustration I experience on a daily basis. I'm sure we all do. You can see it coming. I just saw this afternoon. Somebody sent me a video of an Alex Jones apparently is organizing a big convergence on DC to make America great again and save Trump.
Oh, is that the Million MAGA March, or that's different?
Million MAGA March.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm trying to remember what they called it. And I'm hoping it blows up in their face. But this could be some really, ugly stuff, and the really rocky road we're in for. What the left can do about that? Look,
talk to a lot more workers.
Yeah, right. Well, no, it's the only thing you can do. Yeah.
Right? Seriously, like,
it is.
When people say to me, why are white working class versus like the working class, which is, as we know, completely multiracial and everything else. But like when people say, why do white working class people, have racist ideas or, vote for Trump or whatever. And it's like, it's like, well, first of all, a whole lot of people, voted for him across the board, but that's really deeply problematic. But the truth is, it's because we've deunionized the United States, and we have created a level of inequality that's spread out across everyone in some pretty serious universal ways. And so, and we're in a really racist, it's like a racist country. The foundation of the First Division, of course, was race in terms of dividing and conquering the working class. We know this, but in some real terms, we know. Then there's real evidence about this. Like it's like when a white worker is in a trade union, their views are radically different than when they're not in a trade union. And so for all the complaints, I opened up my new book. My opening line of the new book is, unions are such a pain in the ass, because I just wanted to get it out of the way and then get to why unions mattered. Like I literally have that as the opening sentence because I just wanted to be like, yes, sure. Okay, fine. Now let's get to the depth of what it means that you deunionized the country, neoliberals, strategically. Right. And part of what it has resulted in is a lot more sort of white grievance and a lot of racism. That's easier to tap into because, in fact, people are not sitting in a union hall having conversations about what it's going to take to win the contract that's going to change the terms and conditions of their lives in fundamental and radical ways. So, like, I don't think... I'm not personally interested, and I'm sure this will be, alienate me from some people who are watching this, but like, I don't think it's helpful when there's like, anarchists looking at my friends, plenty of people I know out in the streets in New York City last week, fighting at night with cops. And then the images on the TV, and on social media are like cops in riot gear, like throwing bicycles at people, and these nights of skirmishes that were going on, that actually isn't working very well for ordinary people. Like it's actually just not. And so if what we're trying to do is win the masses to the work that we're doing, it's not about that kind of street fighting. It's actually about serious engagement. And that goes back to seriously reinvesting in the field and really putting resources into the kind of organizing that, I was trained in. I didn't invent it. I was trained in it I was mentored by really good organizers. And in every organization that I've worked in every union, the level of solidarity is super high. because we're actively, constantly campaigning to fight, to raise expectations, to fight for real gains. And in any real fight to win serious gains, you simply can't do it without 90% unity. So what's it take to build 90% unity? It's like, that's the ongoing, constant conversation about why I think the best place to fight racism and to fight sexism and to fight misogyny is from the House of Labor. It's like from inside of a class-based movement that actually teaches people who the fucking problem is, which is not each other. It's the boss and the system that created the boss, you know? So it's just, it's maddening.
That's more effective than asking people to check their white privilege.
Yeah, I have to follow up just on a couple of small points, and it really is a follow-up. The last few years I was teaching, I would, and it really didn't matter what the class was. I would do it like for all of the undergraduate classes, no matter what. But I'd find a way to bring up, the fight over Chinese exclusion on the West Coast. In the late 19th century. And I'd make this point, because everybody knows, the story, mea culpa, the white workers were so racist, they hate the fucking Chinese. So I said, okay, so look, Leland of Stanford and the other railroad operators and growers announced public campaign, that they wanted to import Chinese workers because, for racial reasons specifically, they believed that those workers could live on less than so-called Native American workers, which is what the white workers were then called. All right. So I say to them, so imagine yourself as a Native American white worker in 1870, hearing this argument coming from the employers. How do you respond? Well, the first thing is, like, you respond to the terms that the fucking employer sets for the fight. Right, but you never hear that side of it, right? I mean, not even from the lefty labor historians, right? Because everybody's participating in what Kant called the logic of the trial, right? So we go and look at the past to see who we can find, was guilty of racism, right, sexism, whatever. So that's one thing. But I have another story to offer too before I make my other point. If it's okay, it's fairly brief. Like almost exactly a year ago, plus a week or two, I was in South Carolina on a labor swing for the campaign, and at a steelworkers local in Georgetown, which is a little south of Myrtle Beach, two vocal white rank and filers were there. One is a guy. He looked like he was probably my age. Probably wasn't. He said he grew up on a farm, and he was dumb as fucking rocks, right? So all that he said was, bring back the manufacturing jobs, kick out the immigrants, right? Illegal immigrants. So you ask him what time it was, and like those are his responses. So after a little bit, I just let him go. But the other guy, he worked in a paper mill, and it's about 40 something, I think. And his thing was, he says, well, so what I like a lot of what I see in Sanders' economic program, but the thing I don't understand is why do Democrats always get caught up in, or let themselves get caught up in what he called these moral issues? So I tried to tease that out a little bit, and he didn't say specifically, but we knew what they were. So we sort of tiptoed around, and I tried to do the pluralism thing with him. But what kind of stopped him in his tracks a little bit was, I said, well, so which is more important to you, right? That you have access to health care and a decent retirement, or that no woman ever be able to have an abortion, or that you have rights on a job and a pension, or that no two gay people or no two same-sex people can ever get married. And it stopped him in his tracks, because he's a decent guy, for just enough that as Jane says, like, if I feel confident enough that somebody who has standing with him in his life, right, were to continue pushing on this, and over time they could move. And the last thing was, I said, look, I noticed somebody on your shift that you can't stand, right? You can't wait to get off so you don't have to see this asshole again till the next time you come to work. But I also bet you that on union issues, like as much as you might hate that guy's guts otherwise, that you can find a way to deal with each other to get the work done, right? But so that's another petty illustration, like of what having the personal contact can do. But the big point I wanted to make was with respect to Trump having hit this vein of deep-seated white working class racism. There's still this problem that the McWilkyites of whatever stripe have, which is that in 2016,
Wilkie?
McWilkyites.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were Mick Wilkie as in like Wendell Wilkie or something.
Oh yeah, no, Mac Wilkieite.
Okay, Mick Wilkie.
And Mac is not a hamburger; it's McCarthy.
Oh, it's not a McAlevey. Just saying.
Right?
Go
Yeah.
No, totally not. Nor is it McDonald, which is my family. But anyway. Between 6.5 million and a little over 9 million people who voted for Trump in 2016 had voted for Sanders in the primaries and Obama at least once. And one of the lines that the McWilkyiite talking heads going to give you is that, well, they tried to conceal their racism by voting for Obama. And right, so it makes no fucking sense. But
none.
But,
in the voting booth in private, they were trying to, yeah.
Right. But when you tease it out a little more and think about Obama and think about Trump, and it was not an uncommon response that people made to family members and the like who were appalled that they voted for Trump this time to say, well, I voted for Trump for the same reason I voted for Obama, right? Because what Obama offered us all really was that he, coming out of the Great Recession, he would make our lives better.
That's right.
Because he embodied literally a kind of progressivism that was an ethereal thing, right? It didn't have any concrete substance, but because of who he was, his person, and his racial person in particular, because that's where the whole first black president, idolatry thing played into this. I still want to hold out a little bit for the Warren Harding, but because I don't want to take his place in history. But Trump offered the same thing, right? Trust me because of who I am, my person, and ultimately my racial person, right? Will bring the deliverance to you, right? So in that sense, and I know like Charles Blow and the rest of the middle brow media on their best days, middle brow, all full of Trump is the expurgation of the black presidents, and so forth and so on. But from my perspective, or from the perspective I've suggested here just now, they're two sides of the same coin. They both stand for the evacuation of content, right, from our politics, and redefinition of populist, progressive insurgency in ways that are not only totally unmoored to any discrete political program, which works out quite well, but in both cases, do all of the delivering for the ruling class. So here we are. Oh, actually, I want to say one more thing while I have the floor, kind of. That on the polling stuff, like Jane and I have been singing two-part harmony on that polling shit since probably before we knew each other. But like I wrote a fair amount about the 2004 race, just because people like Rick Perlstein and others asked me. But so like we see the Democrats have been doing the same thing over and over and over. They've become more and more dependent on the pollsters and political consultants more and therefore more and more inclined to make up these magical, fantastic constituencies. Like I hadn't heard the Patagonia Democrats thing before, but whenever I hear it or see it, I remember the first time that I ever heard of and walked into a Patagonia, which was at Union Square, and I just thought this was the sickest shit I'd ever seen in my life. But we got to figure, and a lot of the commentators and the political scientists who examine this see a conundrum, right? Because from a reasonable perspective, you can see that in principle, like this stuff wouldn't pay off over time, and in practice, it hasn't paid off. But the problem with the intellectuals is that they just think that if there's something that they don't understand, it's because the people who are doing it are dumb and like need to have it explained to them. But if you assume that democratic or decision-making democratic elites are as basically smart as we are, then the problem can't be that they can't recognize what's happening, but there's something else that's blocking them. And what that comes down to is where the Republicans, after Goldwater's defeat, were able to go underground and work for years on fine-tuning constituencies and field testing messages and bundling them in ways that enable them to put together a fundamentally revanchist popular electoral constituency, but a governing but around a set of issues that had nothing at all to do with the economy, and to put that together with the upper class economic interests that they'd all or the right wing financial and other economic interests that they'd always been connected with. Like the Democrats hadn't done that, hadn't been able to do that. So much of the Democrats' electoral base is made up of working people who need and want some kind of redistribution. That's what sends them out trying to find a magical constituency, right every time. So that as what's his name, the former mayor and former governor Schumer and Rendell said in 2016, right? For every blue collar vote they lose in Western Pennsylvania, they pick up two versions of that woman who's like an economics professor at Drew, who's a Republican, but she was going to vote for Clinton because her son is autistic, and there's no room for him in Donald Trump's world. Like I watched those commercials because we were a battleground state, so they're pumping this shit all day long. And the Democrats ran two commercials, that one and the grab them by the pussy commercial. I'm thinking, really, this is going to win Pennsylvania? Really, you think this is going to win it? So, but they've got to do it because they've got to find a way to sell the rest of us a bill of goods, right? While they, deliver the country for Wall Street. And in that sense, are kind of like the Whigs in the 1840s, right? I mean, they can put together a viable enough electoral coalition to come close to winning, like every time, and win maybe every third or fourth time. Mm-hmm. And that keeps the hope alive until it doesn't. But I've been waiting for the Democrats to collapse under the weight of their own contradictions, like the Whigs, for like 30 years. I didn't want it to happen this year because the outcome wouldn't be good. But so anyway, okay, I'm sorry, but that's what to make that.
Jane, do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like thinking about 2022, and what the consequence is going to be in the midterms.
Right.
If they actually just do jack shit, like if nothing is really fundamentally done, if what the Democrats do is form like 20 commissions, right? They're really good at commissions. Like, let's form a commission on police behavior. Let's form a commission on pre-existing conditions. Let's form a commission on, and it's going to take that commission like 6 months to get together, and then like a year. And by the way, there is actually a strategic way to do a commission, by the way. But it's not the kind of commission they're talking about. Like there are, in the years, I think when I first met Adolph, when I was desperately trying to find experts who understood anything about something called Hope 6 and housing and public housing rules, and because I didn't know anything about it, I was a union organizer, and we're getting stuck in this big, they're trying to demolish all this housing, right? So, and we created a blue ribbon commission on affordable housing that was super strategic. And I was co-chairing it with, at the time, a young Roger Van, who would go on to work with Ben Jealous and whatever in the better years of the NAACP, that is. So he and I were like co-chairing this commission because the labor movement had enough power to get the right people seated. So we like set up the commission, and then what we do with it? We just took like state money and the imprimatur of the state and began to like do walkthroughs of every neighborhood. We held hearings. We went into neighbors' houses. We dragged elected officials and the media in tow, like into the beautiful housing that they wanted to tear down, that they said was like rat infested. And in fact, it was not at all rat infested. It was actually quite not, whatever. So there is a strategic commission, but that's not what these guys are going to do. So I'm already freaking out thinking about like the implications in the midterm elections, and then in 2024, let alone 2028, and what more bad politics and do nothingism is going to set us up for in 2022 and even 2024 is mildly terrifying for me at this point, right? Like there's going to be potentially a return to some really bad, whether it's Trump again or whoever the hell it is coming after him. It's like he is not going away, and they're not going to go away. So I'm deeply concerned, about the mamby-pamby sort of failure of imagination that the Biden people and whoever need to get in there and actually win some stuff that is both material and real and substantial, that then gives any hope to getting an even more progressive agenda in 2022, let alone holding on to and or winning something better in 2024, let alone seriously going backwards. That is a sort of terrifying thought to me. I think there's so much work to be done. And it's almost like as we're having the conversations about what's happening right now, we haven't even talked about literally like that rally or anything else, but like this idea, like the Supreme Court, okay, let's just, whether or not there was ever a court packing, the wrong word, whether or not there was going to be an enhancement, an expansion on the court, that's off the table. So no matter what, like even Joe Manchin probably wouldn't even vote for it, let alone Susan, whatever. So, but when you start to think about the parallel reality of what's going to be going on at the Supreme Court, like how many things are going to be rolled back right now for workers and worker rights, just for starters, let alone civil rights, let alone women's rights, let alone like all those rights that people are worried about. Like there's going to be a parallel agenda going on where they are just stripping us backwards. They're going to strip us backwards at the Supreme Court in a pretty profound way. Whether or not they move on the Affordable Care Act, all the mumbo jumbo today, it's like, well, yeah, because if they took if they took away the Affordable Care Act now, it would actually set us up to sort of make a big run for Medicare for all in a better way, right? So like the lesser of two evils for a middling Supreme Court right now in a pandemic, maybe that they don't kill that thing, but it's. So I just think we're sort of, when you look at the deeper power structure analysis of what we're facing and what we're up against, the census, the Supreme Court, mealy-mouthed people who are sitting in the middle in the Senate and in the, even if we win Georgia, which I got to say is some wishful thinking. It's like saying we're going to take Texas in 2020. Like we should be investing in Georgia on the ground in real base organizations, right? Which I keep tweeting what these base organizations are. We need to build for Georgia, but the idea that we're going to pull 2 seats out of Georgia, it's just wrong-headed. So it's going to be a lot of pollsters and a lot of money and everything we're saying on steroids. But we could actually make some real gains if we, if we approach the work like organizers. So for us to live to fight another day in a serious way, we're actually going to have to pull some real wins And the Supreme Court is going to be this like backward sucking sound to everything that we're doing. So I need to note like that the power structure is deep right now.
So how do we set against that, or how to organize or do
that?
I
think that's right. I think, and if we can't, then I think the most likely outcome for 2024, if not sooner, is like a more competent and more efficient version of Trump. And like another thing to think about too, is right now we're in this kind of funny moment where so what Trump wants to do is create enough chaos that the ruling class, right, will just say, okay, too much, right? What we know to this point is that, and I think this is one way to read. Like I found it a little reassuring. This is you touch at straws. How all of the corporate media covered the election, right? Even Fox in its own way.
Yeah.
So that made it pretty clear that the signals that they're getting from the national security apparatus or whoever the fuck else is they listen to, think that this coup thing is like a bad idea. All right, but here's the problem though. I mean, take people like Elon Musk, Bezos.
Do we have to? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah.
No, really, take my wife.
Yeah,
take my Musk. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And pass them over to the NKVD. But the people who have sort of come forward, right, as part of even Kimberly Crenshaw's cohort of woke billionaires. Well, it's not like they've got any commitment to democracy, really,
right,
or like to democratic institutions. So the question is, could they, make a determination that, well, all right, so if Trump or whatever follows Trump that's better organized and less flamboyant could just rip the Band-Aid off, then really an authoritarian regime is more in keeping with the people who crafted Prop 22, for instance, right? Than anything else is. And in the absence of, Mark Dudzik and I have been describing neoliberalism as capitalism that's effectively eliminated working class opposition. And that's their utopia. So, I mean, and I agree with Jane, right? I mean, we've got to come up with some wins between now and 2022. My concern is that, and this is true of the labor movement. I mean, institutional labor is likely as not to spend the first year and a half saying, "Shut up, we got to get behind Biden and Harris," right? Who have made clear to us that their posture is, don't ask me for shit, basically. And some more bullshit about hope, and now with Kamala we got like 12 different fucking firsts, right? To float on, basically, right? But instead of doing anything.
First person to try to prosecute parents for truancy.
Yeah, well, yeah. Although I think that our DA, I think our DA in New Haven in the mid '80s was trying to do that too, though. So she may not have been the first. She wasn't alone, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, right.
But yeah, but still, like we come back to the same things. Like we come back to the movement building work, right? Which is the key, and that's got to come through the labor movement because it's not coming from anywhere else.
Yeah. So, what has to happen? What can happen? What will happen? What wins can Biden be forced to fight for? Because he clearly won't fight for them on his own.
I mean, I think ironically, and I'm sort of like so glad that Trump missed the chance to do a few easy things that if he had done it, he would have won. Right. Really glad he missed doing a few things. So one of them is like infrastructure. right? Like something we could win on is a Green New Deal version of an infrastructure in a serious way. Because it's a jobs program. So like running the jobs program in a way that is about stopping crazy forest fires, floods, forest fire. I mean, there's Hurricane Sandy. I mean, when I wrote that one story and I talk about it in the new book of how they won really kind of the best Green New Deal-ish job at a state level, which was in New York around the transition to wind power. That happened in part because the unions actually said Hurricane Sandy freaked people out. And in the space that came out of Hurricane Sandy, what people think of as the more stereotypical, the building and construction trades, like a lot of unions that make a stereotype of the hard hat guy, sat down and were traumatized by Sandy because people really experienced it, whether they were, working on the subways or whether they were building something or they lost their houses, right? People's houses were flooding in Queens, whatever. So they came out of that experience and said, wow, climate change is like it's a real thing. Like there was this deep dive that was a union-only discussion in New York coming off of Sandy, and the people who moved that discussion, in my mind, were like just brilliant organizers because they were like, oh, here's a moment. What do we do with it? Right? Like in some ways, it's a flip of Naomi Klein's The Shock Doctrine. It's like we need the opposite. Like what does a left organizer do in response to a shock? Right? We should do something very different with every disaster. So the fires and the smoke in the state of California and the forced power outages that have been going on are unbelievable and real. And the flooding is real. And the storms in the Midwest is real. So I think in some interesting way, a Green New Deal, a real infrastructure bill, that's a real jobs program, that's around burying power lines. If you're talking about California, burying power, there is a lot to do. That's a jobs program that could actually be left and smart and pro-future and put a lot of money in a lot of workers' hands. And that should be able to pass. Even that should actually be able to pass a Joe Manchin for sake of argument, right? So it's like if we use him as a bad litmus test, but it's like, so that's at least one thing. And then depending on where the pandemic goes, and how the pandemic goes, the inadequacy of how many people have been thrown out of their healthcare, and the reality of how that's even changing a lot of union discussion about the need for a more universal approach to healthcare. Maybe, but I wouldn't start there because it's like I'd start on jobs, I'd start on green jobs, I'd start on infrastructure, and I'd go for a big win. And in it. I would re-embolden like the small detail stuff we need to do very quickly, which I'm sure is not, by the way, on the to-do list for people right now. It's like we need to very quickly it took the Obama administration 7 years to do some decent work on organizing rights, like workers' right to organize unions. Like that, on like the second day of the administration is sworn in, assuming that they get sworn in. They need to actually go back to the reason I was in Philly. So I can claim some of that Philly victory too. I'm kidding. But the reason I went to Philadelphia to help seven hospitals worth of people, form brand new unions in 2016 and 2017, which contributed to an expanded progressive base in Philadelphia. Those part of the story is because there was like a fair election process that Obama created, like too little, too late at the very end. So like do that on day one. Do that on day one. Make it so that we can have fair election rules again and seriously expand the union base as we're campaigning for an infrastructure package that's climate friendly and smart and that prioritizes hiring women and people of color and like all the things that you can do in a good jobs program. That's for sure. That's the most likely piece to move, I think.
And the good news is too, there's a lot of stuff that's already on the books that Biden could enforce as, the Constitution, his job is literally to enforce the law. So there's stuff that he could do as far as infrastructure.
If they chose to. But then the other thing is like saving the K through 12 system, like pumping money into the education. I mean, there's frankly several things that we could do that would be really, really that should be something we can do. And I think, of course, I think, continuing to build on the strike movement, like way more strikes by smart state and local unions I'm losing hope for the, most of the national ones calling for them, although a few could. And sadly, Unite Here, whose actual industry has been decimated. Part of why we have a debt of gratitude to the Unite Here union folks is because everyone has been laid off, and there was such devastation in their industry that they plowed their genius into all these swing state political races, which was an amazing contribution by the current trade union movement into the political victories. So, but that union could have been a union. I mean, they had a national strike against Marriott, right? So they were running national strikes against a hotel corporation, in the Trump era, which I talk about in the new book too. The point of the new book was I outlined, all these victories that were won once after Trump won. That's what I was doing in a collective bargaining, was saying under Trump, every victory in the new book I wrote happened after Trump took office. And I was trying to make a point that even under really hard circumstances, there's a way to fight and win. And we just have to do a lot more of that kind of fighting and that kind of winning now.
Yeah, and it seems like one of the groups we need to be winning against too are sort of those mealy-mouthed people in the middle you mentioned. And this goes back to the Patagonia Democrats thing. It seems like one of the problems Bernie had in the primary, and this was frustrating because it's not an argument or an orientation I agree with, but the idea that he needed to appeal to sort of the middle class cohort that votes in Democratic primaries. If we're a working class movement, I think we should have a working class base. But how do we create that in such a short period of time in order to beat people in 2022? Is that possible to do, or is that just going to be a much longer term project, registering working class people to help defeat corporate Democrats?
Oh, I think big wins and big campaigns and big transformation can happen very, very quickly. I mean, if people are committed to running a really good campaign, it does not take long. I mean, that's part of the weird thing about, there's this myth that I confront a lot. People are like, oh, there's the chick who wants to talk about organizing. Oh God, that'll be 2020. That'll be 2050, Jane. Doesn't organizing take forever? And I appreciate it. I shouldn't be so cynical, but it's flat wrong. I mean, again, I'm 3 books in now to showing that when you put the correct resources, you align them correctly, and you get a good, skill and talent mix, you can do hella crazy victories in 6, 8, 9, 12 months. I mean, if they change the fair election rules in terms of unionization elections, if Biden and Harris, flipped and just made union elections fair, even kind of fair again, we could organize half the damn country in the next year, and that's real, right? But the resources and the rulemaking, and it's road to victory, and it doesn't take long. And the story of Philadelphia, with 7 hospitals, in 12, probably 16 months altogether, but that could happen all over the country, right? If people got the idea that actually investing in the base and base expansion and going after the 80, I want a map of I want a war room. But first of all, we should talk about what's in a war room. In the war room, I want the 80 million people who could have voted and didn't. We should go organize in the key geographies and the key sectors where the 80 million people are who sat out the election this time around. So coming up with strategic priorities, how to do it, what's the power analysis, where do we need to go to prioritize the resources? If you do all that smart, we could literally, change a hell of a lot of dynamics in just 2 years. If there's an if in there, but if, and thank goodness in some of our bigger unions, there are slowly locals getting really well organized who are contending for and challenging some of the sort of priority setting. And we need a lot more of that, right? We need emboldened locals with really good leadership who are going to start leading from below, which we're seeing happen, certainly in the education sector. So that's a good thing. And we need a lot more of that.
I just wanted to read, if that's okay, 2 questions from viewers, and also thank you, let's see, TT for this comment, riveting and educational conversation. Thanks all. Let's see. Tender Lungs 206 asks, why don't the Black people who came from poor areas like Dr. Dre, Jay-Z, LeBron James, etc., buy all these shutdown businesses and hire poor people to stop the cycle? And Jonathan Tipton Myers asks, why is this often framed as race versus class when these two aligned subjects are issue versus strategy, which invalidates race and creates division?
Well, I'd say the answer to the first question is that's not what they want to do.
Right.
Right. So, and I mean, the second question, yeah, I'm not quite sure I got the second question, actually. What's the second question again?
Yeah, let's see. And maybe you can rewrite it. What's the name? Tenderlungs. No, not Tenderlungs. Who wrote that? Jonathan Tipton Myers. Why is this often framed as race versus class when those two aligned subjects are issue versus strategy, which invalidates race and creates division? I think he's saying that it's maybe, are you saying that it creates division to emphasize class and not race? I don't know. Can you write that out more clearly?
Come on, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my first response is, I mean, who is phrasing like, the debate as race versus class? But I'm not, right? And I've written about this too. Like, I don't know a class reductionist, right? But I've not known a person in like 50 years who contends that, while trying to be on the left, who contends that racism, racial injustice are not serious and real problems that need to be confronted. Saying that, though, is kind of like saying, I believe the children of the future, right? Everybody wants to confront it, but what confronting it is the thing. And in my experience, class reductionism is 100% a canard that's used against people who want to argue that you can't attack racial inequality without going through political economy. So,
I feel like,
So I just ask that question as somebody who says it's all about race, basically. Oh, I'm sorry, Jane.
No. Sorry. No, I do. I feel like we sort of hit on that though in the beginning. You know what I mean? Like or earlier in the conversation, that it's not, they're inseparable. Right. Like it's always made me crazy. It's not race versus class versus gender. It's gender and race playing out in the context of class. And and we can never pull them apart. They are so deeply intertwined. But then the question of strategy, I think it goes back to refielding, like rebuilding a real organizing front. And I don't mean, professional, there's some whole debate about professional, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like skilled, building more experience and skill. We just finished doing this. I mean, I've done like 3 rounds because of the pandemic and Zoom of these like many thousand people trainings in the last 6 months that are trying to just get out of the rhetoric and get into it with people. Like, what does it take to win a campaign? How do you have a hard conversation? How do you identify the person that's most important to identify in the shift or the unit that's going to bring the unit along through the fear, over the racism, through the sexism, all the challenges that we have in every campaign. And, it's not, like I always say about organizing work, it's not rocket science, but actually there is something to it, right? So, one thing that's been sort of beautiful has been realizing, like watching through the classes that we've been doing, these online huge classes with thousands of people, and then putting them into breakout groups, like actually going into breakouts and then sub breakouts, we trained 150 volunteers for the last strike school so that we had enough people to like take people from multi-thousand person Zooms into a breakout where they're practicing a one-to-one organizing conversation in real time with each other and then giving each other feedback. Like that skill matters for us to achieve the kind of gains that we need to achieve. And so that's been a way of like collaborating with the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung to try and get around the fact that there has been, a retrenchment in a lot of the national, not just unions, right? Black church, fill in the blank, like a lot of the national organizations, environmental movement, like kind of across the board, pulled back in the last, that's the whole reason I wrote No Shortcuts, like pulled away from organizing. And part of what I say, and I think you were saying this in the beginning, Adolph, right? It's like, I don't think we've been doing real organizing for decades, not to scale. And when we do it to scale, we win. It's like the whole point of all three of the books I've written is just to keep showing when we do real organizing, when we have hard conversations, when we pick strategic industries, strategic sectors, strategic labor markets, have a sensibility about it and make a plan and a strategy, we actually can win very quickly. And so going around the people who are withholding resources from organizing and just working with Rosa Luxemburg and kicking out these training programs, is an interesting accident of consequence of the pandemic, because you couldn't have paid me to spend time hanging out online thinking that would be an effective way to teach people. And it's not the best, but it's not a bad substitute for the fact that ain't no one teaching people how to do this work anymore, right? It's like this lost art and lost science that we just need a whole lot more of as fast as we can get it.
It just seems like such a non-brainer, by the way, a no-brainer, that if you appeal to people's material interests, that's how you get there to have, like you were saying, Jane, like that's how you have the discussion, or you were saying, Adolph, like it's not by did you use this term, Adolph, a utopian scolding or utopia scolding? Who used that term? It was something, but it's not by shaming people, calling them out, even like calling them in, speaking to their better angels, because why the hell, if you feel like you can't pay your bills or you feel like you're getting left behind, no matter what background you are, like, why the hell do you find it in your heart kind of to have this empathy? It's just not. And then people are so obsessed with just judging people as either redeemable or irredeemable. And the whole, like, we need to stop chasing the mythical white working class. And it's like, okay, if you want to win, if Trump is this existential, unprecedented threat, we need a majority. I mean, it's a numbers game, right? It's not that deep. And how about we do it in a way that like brings people together? It's just, I don't know. Like,
right. It seems like there's this really big investment in just being in total denial with some people on the left that anybody, and I really encountered this, that anybody in the working class might have any sort of like bigotry or, prejudice or anything. And it's like, if you've worked a low wage job, then that's real. But that's why you have to see people not as irredeemable, but, is racism a spectrum, or is it a binary? I think a lot of people think of it as you're either racist or you're not, versus, everyone has their own biases, and the way we work through them is through organizing.
Well, yeah, I think I'd go a little farther than that. I mean, because from one perspective, right, racism, people tend to think of it as a fixed attitude. Yeah. Right. And that's not necessarily the case either, right? Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, you know what I mean? Like if I don't know, like if a blonde guy cuts me off on the highway, right?
We would never do that.
You call him a Nazi.
Blonde asshole, right? I mean, that's
Nazi.
Right, that happens, right? And I've done a lot worse than that. And I suspect maybe all of us have, or at least some of us have. But the
blonde guys have done a little worse than that, by the way.
But the problem with the racism as a thing, right, that lives inside you, is that well, in the first place, it's wrong, right? Like and I mean, people don't ever define it, right? Right. I mean, what I've said in the past that I mean, this is one of the ways that anti-racism is like anti-terrorism, right? It's a beautiful enemy, right? Because it's not substantial, right? It doesn't live anywhere in particular, and it's not even expressed through any definite set of acts, right? Right. I mean, anything can count as racism, and it's also transhistorical, right? So, like, there's an article in the Times, an expose of Alexander Hamilton a couple of years ago, right? Well, who would be surprised that anybody, right, even abolitionists among the governing property elites in the United States in the late 18th century didn't have some connection with the slave trade, and is just like they, by the way, had connections with the trade and indentured workers, and and operated with the crucial distinction between people that own property and people who didn't own property. And just because you dabbled like in the slave trade, or maybe even were aggressively invested in the slave trade, didn't necessarily mean that you hated black people, right? It's just that you knew how to make a good investment, and they could be like collateral damage. Don't forget, like the governing or the dominant defense of slavery among American elites till the end of the 1830s was that it was a necessary evil, right? And it's necessary so that I get paid, right? But yeah, it's fucked up in a lot of ways, but that's how it is, and that was the defense that worked as long as there was a consensual understanding that political discourse was restricted to a pretty small group of rich property-owning men. And then after that began to break down, like in the face of mass franchise or mass suffrage, then the rationale becomes a little more complex, right? It turns out it's a necessary evil, right? It turns out it's a positive good. Right? It's good for the slaves, it's good for all the rest of us, right, and so forth and so on. But the problem with seeing racism as a thing that's always like an insubstantial thing, right? And seeing that thing as unchanged and unchanging over time, right? Even reading it back into earlier historical periods when the kinds of distinctions that became consolidated about race and race difference by the middle of the 19th century didn't exist, right? It's really like a John Carpenter movie, right? And that doesn't really help us, like, I understand anything, right? But even passing prejudices, or which can come and go, and like I'd even take a case like what the cases that people might think of as when when concupiscent nature comes out, right? Like the pornographic racist things that white people have said during open housing fights or school desegregation fights, for instance. The same people might have said something entirely different on a different day, like in a different context. They might have black friends, and just make that there's all kinds of fluidity out there about that stuff. And certainly with respect to the past, where all of those decisions have been made already anyway, but also for the present, like our job isn't to try to figure out who goes to heaven, who goes to hell, right?
I've got a list. I've got a list though, Adolph.
Uh-huh.
I have a list.
Yeah.
No, me too. And if it's on my mind, I'd like to help him pack and get there. But the last thing I'll say about this too is that notions like systemic racism or the structural racism need to be explained, right? People toss them out there, and they toss them out there because it feels good, right? There's a kind of tasty heft, right, to invoking them, but nobody ever says what they're supposed to mean, right? Like, so at this point, I would like to start a campaign, call on anybody who uses either one of those phrases, for instance, to have to say, when I say structural racism, I mean, right, A, B, C, D, E, because it's an alternative to an explanation. And I mean, going back to your campmates, but observation, it's significant, right? I mean, there's quite a difference when people who are engaged on the front lines of a struggle for racial justice, as they see it, are targeting specific policies on both coming both ways, right? Both pro and con. And when they're talking about some abstraction that can't be nailed down, because when you get down to it, and like even the Archbishop of anti-racism.
What's her name? Robin DiAngelo? Oh, Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Oh, well, yeah, well, all of them, right? About that whole cohort. If you assume that racism, again, like, is this thing, right? This sin, and like, this is the way that the liberal academics have talked about it since a Myrdal study, that it's the nation's original sin. It's it's a disease. No, it's a set of attitudes and expressions that emerge out of a given pattern of social relations. But if they're right, like, if this most radical sounding construct is correct, then, as even they, like the Afro-pessimists, will acknowledge it, then we're fucked, right? There's nothing you can do about it. You can't defeat it. And that's like a luxurious suffering that only people who have healthcare and good jobs and housing and stuff like that can't afford to indulge.
Or it's like a personal exorcism.
Yes,
that's how you defeat it. Like one, right. As within your heart.
Right, the body is structural.
Yeah.
So you're telling me I can't get my racism gland removed?
Yeah.
Dr. Ibram X. Kendi can't extract that from my brain?
I will say, I mean, in a slightly counterintuitive way, before going back to the point about race, class, and gender together. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do remember when I was, I don't know how old I was. I was young. I was working at the Highlander Center, so it's like early 20s. Mm-hmm. And I got dragged in by Ann Braden. I forget who. I got dragged. I went to some Undoing Racism. It was called Undoing Racism training in New Orleans when I was young, right? A long ass time ago. And there was some of this stuff in it, but it was being done by sort of left, more radical working class folks. And I would say that there were just enough participatory good things that made you really, really, really more, for people who hadn't thought about it, which I wouldn't say that I was in that category, but it was not bad to dwell and be forced to really contemplate sort of the level of white privilege, like literally what it means to have white skin privilege. So, some of that stuff is good. It's just, it's not going to get us there. No. And part of why I go back to why I'm going to say unions are a pain in the ass and then get right past it and get to why they matter so much is coming back to this point, which is like, I mean, I go to this example of the Filipinas and the white nurses, and I can do it with white nurses and black nurses. And because for me, it's interesting to stay in the train of gender for a minute. Like so much of my union organizing work is among women, whether it's the healthcare sector or the education sector. It's like dominated by women. So I'm already like getting out of the stereotype of like racism and like linked to white men, because actually it's a whole lot of white women where there's issues. And I like going to the Filipina nurses. I mean, the West Coast is just filled with Filipina nurses, right? That's by strategic design by the bosses. They're flying them in to try and bring the wages down. I mean, it's pretty cookie cutter. But and that's different than the East Coast where I organize, where it's more Jamaican and it's a different Puerto Rican, it's a different subset that the bosses are trying to divide and conquer with. But on the West Coast, when I moved from organizing healthcare workers on the East Coast to moving to the West Coast, it was this constant confrontation of racism, really anti-immigrant, kind of anti-Filipina racism by a lot of white nurses until the union campaign began. And how quickly, like in several months, people who thought they had these like long entrenched like ideas in their head, how quickly one good campaign like radically shifted their understanding of the world. And when their understanding of the world shifted, they no longer had a reason to be shitty to Filipina nurses, right? And there was like, I would go to the Filipina nurses in a campaign and they'd be like, we're sick of those white nurses. They give us the shittiest shifts. They give us, and it was all true. It's all true. Now you could call that structural racism, or you could just say, like, no one's ever helped people understand why the bosses on the West Coast in the hospital sector are endlessly flying in nurses that they think they can abuse from the Philippines on special visa statuses, right? And when you and I do think that workers are smart. I think ordinary people are. I've met more interesting, brilliant, ordinary people than sorry, I'm just going to make a little thing. Then like my time in academia, it's like, oh my God, really? There's brilliant workers all over this country whose energy and genius we're never going to tap because there's so much cynicism about who's smart and who's not. And when I was having those early conversations over and over and over, because we got to 9 out of 10 nurses in Nevada organized. It's the highest nurse density in the United States of America by the end of that 4 years of campaigning. And so constantly dealing with the question of immigrant language, white nurse racism, and oppressed sort of Filipinas. And then all of it would get, I'm serious about how much of this issue got solved in one good campaign at a time to build a level of solidarity where every time a white nurse said to me, the Filipinas, only speak in Tagalog, or the Filipinos won't go on strike if the rest of us do because they're going to be too scared of their visa. And literally me looking at white nurses and very nicely saying over and over, why do you think the employer has brought them here? And then really engaging that question, like in a slow, like what, just tell me why you think. And then the nurses will say, well, to pay them less. Okay. That now we're getting somewhere. Correct. That, and I would be like, exactly. Right. Like that's right. So good steps. So the employer is bringing them here to pay them less. So what do you think that's going to do to your wages and your possibilities of getting more staff and a pension? Well, it's probably, and then you just shut up and let them think for a minute. Mm-hmm. And then they actually start figuring out, holy shit, the boss is pulling one over on us here. You know what I mean? And then they actually work it out. And then we go through a strike, and then they build huge solidarity, and they start having families coming out together. And then we're having strike victories together. And suddenly everyone's breaking bread and having a great time. And you know what? Those people are radically different. And their racism is fundamentally, I'm not saying it's gone, but it's like they even recognize it. They understand that they were doing something wrong, and they don't understand that because I stood up and lectured them. I continuously posed a series of questions in a class-based context about why do you think the boss is flying all of those people here? And then let's work through that material gain question about getting more nurses on the shifts, or getting a pension, or getting fully employer paid healthcare for you and your family, or whatever, because then they're going to realize we got way more in common than we do with the asshole on top.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you guys all questions about the election, and Jane, your stories about Florida, but I think we've gone on. I mean, this has been so great, and I'm very appreciative of how generous you guys have been with your time.
Can I ask Adolph one quick question to see if I can get a hot scoop?
Sure.
I watched the talk you did with Willie Leggett on South Carolina, and I'm wondering if there's any chance, I don't know if he's in the same district, but is there any chance that Willie Leggett will primary Jim Clyburn?
It's funny you mention that, because he just ran for a state house seat in Orangeburg, but it wasn't a real campaign. I mean, we just ran him, to keep the ballot line that we have for a South Carolina on Labor Party. But no, I mean, look, Clyburn, running against Clyburn in a campaign is a suicide mission, right? And like what we've been trying to do, because we're still working down here, and we're not really focused on electoral stuff at all, except to get a handle on it, right? And who's doing what. But we're focused more on actually, especially since the pandemic, right? I'm operating through institutions like the president of the state Fed is a close ally, and we're building relationships with other unions. Like the teachers organization is great, and the woman who's the president of it is fabulous. We're trying to build a close relationship with her. And I mean, Clyburn. Willie, by the way, has known Jamie Harrison since Harrison was a kid, and he said that Harrison was always had his eye on the main chance and his lips pursed to find the right ass, and he and like he's like everybody else in South Carolina, or like every other Black Democrat with aspirations, is hoping they're close enough to Clyburn to be tapped as his successor. But no, I mean,
he's unbeatable.
Right. Yeah.
Because he's the most progressive, as he said the other day about himself. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah. Oh no, I didn't. But I do know that this is the guy. And see, there's a story there too, obviously, about how they played this whole black vote thing. But when Clyburn finally stopped being coy and announced his support for Biden, he actually said that as far as he was concerned, the race was between Biden and Medicare for all. So that's just kind of...
He's like the biggest recipient of pharmaceutical.
He is.
Yeah.
Right. Over $1 million in 10 years. And that buys a lot of political clout in the state of South Carolina. See, I'm asking something else about the electoral stuff. Maybe this is a different discussion to have at a different point, but resources in most electoral contests will beat no resources, right? But most of the time. And another practice that the Democrats seem to have fallen into in their general kind of American Idol approach to like electoral politics. So, I mean, like last time we had like Beto and Stacey Abrams, who created this new category called the almost victor, right? So you find an improbable candidate to run against and a very probable kind of Republican opposition, raise a shitload of money. And this was the same thing happened with Jamie this time. But raise $100 million and almost win. And then what happens is the almost victor gets to follow a new career path as like a kingmaker within the party. Beto kind of faltered because his White Chocolate Obama Act wasn't as good as Mayor Pete's White Chocolate Obama Act. So I don't know what the hell he's doing now.
And as we all know, white chocolate is not actually chocolate.
True. But it can be tasty.
We invented that, but yeah, you just split me open on the American Idol approach, and the almost victor.
Yeah.
But sorry, I don't know if I'm interrupting on that point, but like that goes back to that same issue of like the money that's going to get thrown into Georgia right now, the money that's going to get, like, I am pleading with people. I'll just say it. I mean, if people go to my website, people are interested. Like I've put the two main sort of action fund, like the ways that everyone should put money into Georgia if they feel like they want to, because people just do want to, is not into any national candidate. It's not into the national party. It's not to any of them. Right. It's to the base organizations that are knocking on door, that live there, that are from there, that are actually, that know their state, and that are not under some delusion that they're going to pull 2 Senate seats. But we know that the more we invest in the base, the more real it's going to become. I do believe at some point we will take Texas, and it's not going to happen because of the American Idol almost victor candidate. It's going to happen because there are some unions. There's the education sector. Like there's really good people on the ground, Latino, Black organizations, and also really great unions, and they're all mixing it up, and they're doing dogged day in and day out work. And every time I think about like the money thrown to McGrath in Kentucky, you think you're gonna, like, when people innocent people who just don't follow this stuff every day and don't know it, and neighbors of mine are like, oh, I sent some money to McGrath. Do you think, Jane, do you think, literally at the mailboxes, do you think we have a chance of taking out McConnell? And I'm like, did you just send a check to Kentucky? Like, seriously, imagine if that money had a year ago gone into all the base organizations in Georgia. Do you think we would stand a better chance of winning something in Georgia right now if the kind of money that they dump into these ridiculous races had been being strategically targeted into base level organizations who have a realistic understanding of what it's going to take to win their states? It's just different strategy needed completely.
Jamie Harrison has a deceptively cute baby face. He seems so sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dangerous.
Well, I mean, I'd say to that, Jane, I'm obviously I agree completely. And part of the deal, too, like especially in states like Kentucky, and they did it before in Tennessee, Texas, too, is that feeds the appeal of the conservative Democratic candidate, right?
Yeah.
Right. Because McGrath's claim to fame was he was
Air Force,
Air Force, Marine pilot, some shit, whatever.
Yeah.
And she's like soft on, or she's on all the conventional, the new Democrat issues. Like she's not even there, but she's not even really like pro reproductive rights or any of that stuff.
Right.
No. Anyway, yeah, it's crazy. Speaking of people, another, the constituency we don't need to go look for that people consistently ignore on the left too is veterans. Speaking of what day it is, but the number of the real working class people who are sacrificing their lives. Like I keep thinking, another massively untapped. Like if I was just doling out the money, we'd be building veterans organizations out of the attack on the Veterans Administration, out of the VA. And their hospitals and healthcare system, we'd be doing all of that. There's so much good work to do right now if the resources were being strategically aligned, and resources do matter, which is another reason why we got to build unions. Just saying.
That's so funny because literally a super chat just came in that I was about to read. From Chia Sinfai. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I really love this and really find this hopeful. Weird, I know. Combat veteran. The person writing is a combat veteran and want to get your opinion on if trying to organize veterans to save GI benefits and socialists is a project worthwhile pursuing.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. There was this moment. That is funny timing. There was a moment. This is in 2012 because I know I was in the PhD program, and some national group wanted me to consult with them about like a better version of the conversation of like where was some untapped constituency, like what were we missing? And Astrid Taylor and the really good work around the debtor stuff hadn't started yet, but that is another example of like a good constituency that's organizable, or debtors, right? If we do it right. But anyway, another one and at that moment, Walmart had just announced. And I have family, who were in Iraq, sadly, kids, young ones, in my family who saw that as both the right thing to do because whoever it was on the news that night after 911 told them to, and they went and jumped. Right. They're all Bernie people now, by the way. Every young person in my
huge
family,
veterans, right? Population.
They're all Bernie people, and deeply so. And they're still like young. I mean, they're in their young 30s now, and they're like disgusted with anyone who's not Bernie Sanders, just for starters. Same. And secondly, there was this moment in 2012 when Walmart announced that they were going to hire 100,000 returning veterans from Afghanistan. It was like an Obama, some deal was cut, Hillary, I don't know. It was like, and Walmart announced that they were going to hire 100,000. They committed to 100,000 veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan that they were going to hire in 2012. And I literally was like, I wish some fairy godmother would just give me the money at that moment to go organize the 100,000 veterans around things that they really needed and send them as the salts into Walmart to take Walmart. Like you really can figure out power and strategy if you're putting your brains to it. So yeah, we should be talking to veterans. And and the attack on the Veterans Administration, which, by the way, was completely bipartisan, is just disgusting. The VA healthcare system is an extraordinary healthcare system, and that has been a bipartisan attack to destroy it. And it is so easy to go out and get veterans upset about that at the grassroots level all over this country. Anywhere there's a VA, we should be organizing around a better vision of you don't have to say, this is a socialist form of healthcare. You just say every veteran actually obviously deserves lifetime of healthcare when they come home. By the way, there's like 96% approval of the Veterans Administration by veterans because it's a really good healthcare system, even though it's being destroyed intentionally with bipartisan support. So it's like you just hold, and that's the same kind of beautiful conversation I've had with people, like ordinary people. And you start so how do you think why is your healthcare so good? You just start walking veterans through what they like about their healthcare system, and you can leap very quickly to a lot of other really good issues. So
IDW said, that's me, ex-military, never had any organizers approach me.
Yeah.
And then someone else said it would be hard to get, sorry, I can't find it, but someone said it would be hard to get, where is it? Military on board. But I think that also, easy in some ways, like you were saying, Jane. It's like Do you like the way, your healthcare works?
Mm-hmm.
And again, you don't have to dress it in the language of socialism.
Ever. Don't socialists, please don't dress these conversations in the language of socialism. Don't do that and stick to
the
like
language
what
of Kautskyism.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, yeah.
And then just going to read a couple more, which you guys can respond to whichever ones you want to. Rideshare advocate here. How aware are labor organizers of new union busting goals of tech and Prop 22, which is to wipe out W2 and then people? Someone wants to talk. We talked about this earlier on, but Bernie as John Smith wants to know about if we can talk about Bernie as Secretary of Labor. I've read he wants that position. We talked about that earlier. But
we can definitely talk about it.
Yeah, Anders and I can.
All we can do about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Stephanie,
it's also like a low bar in my opinion. Like he should be Secretary of State. I hate the idea that he should be in labor. It's like, really?
No, I think he should stay in the Senate, though. Also, stay in the Senate. Stephanie Welch writes, Adolph and Jane, two of my favorite guests. I do hope you write a series of pieces together. Are there any examples of allegiances you've seen forming that most people wouldn't believe was possible? Great conversation. David Devoid Reality says, great conversation tonight. Thank you all. Maybe part 2 after Biden finalizes his cabinet.
Oh, no.
Doing what the Democratic...
lost their host? Oh, there she is. Good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Whoops. They're trying to silence me. Crystal C. writes, do you see national issue organizations doing what the Democratic Party seems to do, money towards consulting versus old-fashioned organizing, ground campaigns? Okay. And then Whole Wheat Bread says, tell Papa Reed I'm his class reductionist son he doesn't know about, and thanks for the hard work and inspiring interview. Anyway.
Yeah, tell him I'm not going on Maury.
Okay, no more. Yeah, exactly.
That really would be the 2020 Maury, is deciding who is in his not a class reductionist.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of questions in there, but inspiring, surprising combos or allegiance. What was it? What was the word? Coalition. Where is it? Examples of allegiances you've seen forming that most people wouldn't believe was possible.
I mean, to me, they're every group of previously thought they didn't get along workers suddenly, walking off the job together at 95% unity.
Yeah, there are a lot of examples in this too.
Yeah.
Lots, endless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like back to the early days of hanging out with, meeting Adolph, watching remember there's moments in Connecticut, this is like the 1990s, this is so long ago, like watching, Black ministers not get bought off by real estate developers and mayors, but holding their own with their own constituents to keep up housing and defeat a Hope 6 in the big fight we did in Connecticut 100,000 years ago, which I didn't know was the only Hope 6 ever defeated. But anyway, I feel like my whole life is like really, really good organizing produces endlessly strange allegiances because they're not strange. It's how we approach them. They're actually not strange. It's just, are we putting people into conversations in the right way that have them come to different conclusions?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what the work is.
That's the work.
Schultze 100 says, fuck yeah, Jane. He should just give Biden a good slap in the face and tell him, wise up, boy, or even you're nothing to me, nothing. That'd be a good thing. Yeah.
If you only had done that in that debate.
Oh, well, I mean, I talked about that with Chuck Rocha and Linda Sarsour the other day. By the way, Linda and I are sending people to hell who hate Bernie. Those people are canceled. You guys talk about heaven and hell.
Okay.
Bernie haters, I just don't understand them. And then, I guess I have a question about 2000 and your really interesting story, Jane, but it's late. I don't want to, unless you're really revving to talk more.
I'm not revving. I'm happy to take one more question. Okay. I'm not revving.
Well, I gotta
get up and actually write like a 2022 strike plan. That's all I'm saying. So
so why don't we can, one question really quickly, just because it's everyone was talking about and thinking about, wants to know about what Trump is going to do, whether he can steal the election. And what are your thoughts as someone who was there in 2000 with Bush, with that election? and the Brooks Brothers thugs. What are your thoughts on that compared to where we are now?
It's not going to look like the Brooks Brothers, right? Like these guys learn, we don't. So it's not going to look the same. I think I'm sticking to the point I've been making since before Election Day and every day since, which is it's an enormous strategic mistake that we have not put people in streets in very large numbers already. It needed to be done the day after. I've tried to be polite about this, but I think the idea that protect the results, like had all the names, all the lists, all the cell phones, all the emails, of like all the people that needed to take to the streets, to say, by the way, your side lost. I mean, I don't care if it was close, we beat you. And you're going to get the fuck out of the White House, right? Like we need to be peacefully, non-violently, super high roady, bring out the puppets, bring out the whatever, like really like the right messaging. We know how to do this, but our side has needed and needs to be in the streets, strategically and wisely. And for the unions and the Black church and the fill in the blanks, like the institutional players, to be currying access and favors and dreams of, how many times you're going to be in the White House starting soon versus being willing to break with Biden and Harris and the top Democrats right now and say, like, we love you, but actually having a left flank, a smart one in the streets, like creating the space to let ordinary people express what I always just use my neighborhood and whatever, like people around me as examples of there's so much pent up energy right now. And there's so much of a need to be not demobilizing, like that our side is being demobilized while the right is being mobilized, is a very, very, very big mistake. And that, I think we're going to pay the consequence of it very quickly. And the lesson I was thinking about today is, so now we're seeing that the right, is organizing, right? Hello. Like, of course, seeing it, like, of course they were going to organize. Of course, this guy was not going to give up. He said he wasn't going to give up. So, I get these lectures from like the grownups. I call them the grownups in the movement who call me in response to something I tweet. And they say, Jane, this is going to be done. This is not Florida. This is not Florida. Okay. By the way, it's not Florida. In fact, things are way worse right now. Right. So it's not Florida. You're right. But the response of demobilizing versus mobilizing is a huge mistake. And I worry, the thing I say at the end of that chapter in the first book that Jacobin reran is that there was this moment where me and many people have been saying over and over, we need to get in the street. And I don't just mean get in the streets. Like anyone who knows what I really think getting in the streets is not organizing is my favorite thing, which is not but there are moments when you need to get in the streets, right? And there was this moment at the end of the Florida recount where I got a phone call from an unnamed higher up, who I'd been fighting with the entire time for like 33 days straight, I think, in Florida about what the strategy needed to be. And then I get this phone call near the end. The Brooks Brother riots happened. It's basically over. The Supreme Court's going to take it. Everything is like looking horrific, even though Gore actually won the state. And then I get this phone call from like one of the very, very, very top people at the National AFL-CIO, and they're like, McAlevey, you get to do it. You get to put him in the street now. We need a huge rally tomorrow in Miami. Now, what do you need to do it? And I was just like, do you not understand anything about how this works? Like, you can't turn the switch off on human agency intentionally, like refuse to let people go into the streets and then just turn them on 33 days later. And I am really worried right now that that's what's going to happen, that they're going to wake up in like a week and realize, oh shit, like we should have actually created a counter narrative and reinforced the idea in a really peaceful way that, by the way, our side won. We won this. And the numbers aren't in yet, whether it's 75 million to 71 million. I think it's going to be more like 78 million to 7. Like we haven't even counted a bunch of votes in California yet. So the number is going to be even bigger. And we should just claim the real number, and people need to express that we've won this thing and it's time for you to get out of there. And so but my main thing right now is like that I'm obsessed with this concern, and people call and say, but the CEOs are lined up and Wall Street's lined up, and everyone is behind getting him out. And so we're just going to I think he is going to get out. I do. I think he's going to get out. I believe that. But demobilizing is the exact wrong thing to do when governing and winning anything is going to be hella hard, and our side needs to be mobilized, not demobilized. And that is my primary commentary on the analogies right now to Florida are those, and it's like keeping me up every single night right now, every night. And it's not PTSD from Florida. It's reading the House. It's reading Trump. It's reading ordinary people who are starting to get depressed again. Like, is this guy ever going to go away? And we need to say, get out, and say it politely and peacefully. And we need ministers leading it, and we need unions leading it. And they're all like jockeying for access right now. And that is a mistake.
Last thing, and I promise, but I just think it's an important question, which is Curious Carl writes, I don't understand this line of argument. What is accomplished by getting in the streets for an election Biden already won?
Apparently some people don't know yet that Biden already won, right? So reinforcing the idea, right? Like, seriously, reinforcing the idea. We won and you lost. It's not a debate. It's not like when the New York Times came out with the story. I think it was today. Like, yeah, I think it's this morning. I lose track of days right now. Like, we called all the election officials in all the states, and we now printed an article that says, turns out there was no fraud. Like, that's not reaching ordinary people. There's nothing to do with what ordinary people need. People worked very, very hard. The people who won this election and pulled it out in the end worked very hard to pull off this election and win and get an authoritarian, white supremacist, misogynist, super dangerous guy out of the White House. And they need to be invited to say that again in the streets peacefully, and just let it be known. I don't mean every day. I do not mean skirmishes with cops at night. I do not mean that. I mean like Women's March, Climate March, strike level, huge actions that are peaceful and nonviolent, and all the right messages and all the things we mean. So I do not want to be interpreted as like, go have skirmishes in Portland and in New York City. I don't mean that. That is not speaking to the threes, or what I mean by the undecideds. Like, organizing is about bringing people along and having like family friendly, huge, massive actions right now to reinforce the point that we won and we kicked him out. And he's got to get out, and not because the New York Times and the CEO and the Silicon Valley guys are like behind the scenes cutting a deal. Like, no, don't worry. I love when the grown-ups do that to me. Don't worry, we got this one. Well, we didn't have it in Florida very well. So,
and also we got to scare Biden. I think
that's what I mean by why are we demobilizing? We're not going to get anything by demobilizing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. And follow Jane at her not very expected Twitter handle.
Raising expectations. Oh, you put that in there for me. Thanks. I'm so bad about that.
RSGEXP. Adolph, you're still not on Twitter.
Nope.
Someone should just tweet your thoughts out for you. Maybe you and your son, is Touré on Twitter?
No.
You guys could have a joint father-son account.
No, I got lured into. It's like the only social media I do.
Yeah. It's important, honestly, especially if you're organizing. Well, thank you so much, and I'll stay on for a little bit. Anders, I don't know if you want to stay on, but I'm gonna let the interviewees. I'm gonna release them back into the wild of.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Jane, it's great to see you as always.
Thanks.
Great to see you. Great to see you.
Great to see you guys.
Adolph and I together, and I hope it was
helpful. Fun. It was great. Yeah, it was really great.
Good.
Fabulous. Have a good one.
Thanks, you too. Bye. All righty. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. My nose is a little red.
What's that from?
Just the I don't know. There's a light in my face, and it's like the nose is the farthest thing out, and I think it's taking the heat. Anyway, so that was great. Christopher Vance tweeted, super chatted test. I don't know what that means. Bill Cole, the always contrarian Bill Cole said, stop trying to re-educate the MAGA, give up on pluralism. Like Katie said, can we just buy the majority, makes the politics transactional? And I kind of don't get that. And then Jonathan Tipton Myers says, thank you so much for this, out in the streets. Sorry, Anders, I cut you off.
No, that's fine. I mean, what he said, buy the majority?
B-U-Y, yeah.
B-U-Y. I think that's kind of
like
something
purchase.
that, I remember kind of making this pitch to liberals about Bernie because people would say like, how are you going to convince racist people to go along with Medicare for all if black people are going to get it too or whatever? And one answer to that is say bribe them, bribe people to not be racist. Bribe people to be
by
okay
giving them
with
Medicare for all.
Yeah. That's one way to go about it. But.
Thank you, Brian Frederick, for saying great show, Katie. And Anders.
Frederick. Excuse me.
So let's see. Someone writes, I don't know if it's legal to I'm not a cocaine addict, you guys know. Does that even make your nose red? I've never done it.
And it makes it red on the inside.
Oh yeah, so you don't even the joke doesn't.
It might make it red. I don't know.
Zing. I know you also don't do it, right?
I've tried it, but it's not. I'm not.
Okay.
It doesn't make good friends with me.
Alan Boonville, fantastic show. Thanks, Katie. Thank you, Alan. Yeah. What else? Yeah, this is great. This is fun. And yeah, Bernie, we don't want him to do that because we want him to be in. Thank you. We want Bernie to stay in the Senate.
In the Senate, I was hoping he'd be able to groom some new blood on the progressive left, but doesn't look like much was able to get in this year. So,
but shout out to Ilhan Omar for just like destroying her election, and also Rashida Tlaib.
Yep,
I love her. Yeah. She's the only one like holding it down during these like just weird chats where they're blaming people, unfairly blaming them for allegedly, I don't even know. Like, I thought that they liked the results of the election.
Well, the House lost seats, so they're of course blaming that on socialism, as if if Rashida Tlaib and AOC stop using the word socialism, the Republicans would never say it anymore.
Right, that's the dumbest thing. They told that they didn't care that about Biden's positions. Like, a whole lot of good. His left punching and socialist punching did in Florida anyway. Where Fight for 15 passed. So much for them being, I don't know. Well, anything else people want to talk about? We're keeping the show short tonight. Only 2 hours and 36 minutes. Bernie won the Kentucky primary in 2016. Democrats suck. Yep. Anyway, oh, interesting. Someone just put this in, which is good. I want the squad on. Let's try to get the squad on. Crap. Sorry, 1 second. What is this? Where is this? Connie Reed writes, yes, I saw Robert Reich discussing his inability to achieve anything as labor secretary under Clinton administration. Yeah, but unlike Clinton, Biden's the most progressive. You know what? The squad isn't great on Venezuela. And.
Well, I think Tlaib's pretty good, right? Who turned out? AOC was kind of wishy-washy, but and Ayanna Pressley, but Tlaib and
Ayanna Pressley
Ilhan Omar were.
Oh yeah, Ilhan Omar's great on Venezuela. Are you kidding? Yeah. She put Elliot Abrams in the hot seat, big time.
Right.
Yep, he won West Virginia. Any thoughts on this is Walter Byers. Any thoughts on Trump's military
firings?
Thank you. Insofar as alternate motives besides coup, sabotage for Biden administration, I just hope he pulls out of a lot of it would be great if he pulled out of a lot of war, Afghanistan, and I'm still trying to pitch him some I still want to pitch him some ways to own the libs that are actually good for the left.
Yeah, I don't know why he's not. I mean, it's only been a few days, but I don't know why he's not causing as much chaos as he can for like the global elite, the international foreign policy establishment. By
we got to push him to he's got to end. He has to end endless wars before he
We have to tweet that out. We have to have more of Susan Rice tweeting, "Oh my God, if he pardons Edward Snowden, I'm going to
right." I can't even. I believe was what she wrote. Also, Red Sea Socialist said, "Love your show, but I have to put my foot down on telling people to get in the streets for Joe freaking Biden. Absolutely not okay." I don't think that's exactly the point. It's not really to protect Biden. This is not like a Jeff Sessions getting fired. No, who was it? Was it Jeff Sessions? Who were they protesting for? Mueller, Sessions? I can't remember. Sessions, yeah. My God. Then we got Christopher Vance, who's identifies as a trade unionist against critical race theory.
Cool.
Way to shatter that myth of that class reductionist. What secrets will Fantomas Fanto? What secrets will Trump dump before he leaves office? Any predictions? I don't know.
Maybe something about the Clintons or something, or about Biden, if he has anything. I would wish he would do something about JFK, but I think that might be too, like, sealed, or they're just like they're finding ways to, tell him that he has the keys without really giving them to him.
Right. But why would he waste it on JFK when he has real living people to try to humiliate?
That's right. Yeah, he might do that, but apparently Carter tried to investigate UFOs, but the CIA, whoever it was, they just said no. They were like, the fact that you're curious is not a reason for us to give us over to you.
That's why he started doing Habitat for Humanity. He wanted to build those houses and look up. Bill Cole, Katie, populism needs the elite to organize against, but we fail because we are their elite. Neoliberals just do a bad job of buying voters.
What?
I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't.
Elite too.
Yeah.
Is she talking about the left, as in there's too many bourgeois, college-educated people on the left?
Yeah, I don't really understand. Populism needs the elite to organize against, but we fail because we are their elite. Who's elite? Neoliberals just do a bad job of buying voters. Who's the? I don't understand. Explain it to me like I was a 5-year-old. Yeah. Oh, nice. Some nice compliments. Anyway, LBJ was inside job. What? His stepping down. His not running again. The MAGA. Who's? What are you saying about the MAGA, Bill? The MAGA. Who's the MAGA? Who's we? That's what I don't get. Katie, populism needs the elite to organize against, but we fail because we are their elite. Who's
the
we?
MAGA's elite? He's saying that.
Oh,
to MAGA, we're the elite, the cultural elite. Maybe true to an extent.
I don't know what we should do. I
I think that's what this whole conversation with Jane and Adolph was about. Reaching people at their workplace, and we are the MAGA's elite. Yeah. In some cases, that's true. In a lot of cases, even people who have way more money than I do, think of me as an elite because we live on the East Coast.
Yeah. All right. And I'm also not I'm not doing the organ. That's a question for politicians, I think, and organizers. Like the MAGA like Trump and all of them are good at pretending to be. Look, Bernie Sanders handles that, right? He's anti-elite.
Yeah.
He's a senator, and he has like 3 houses, dumps. Well, one of them is nice enough, but I'm not sure if that's like an inherent criticism of. I don't really know what the takeaway is from that, or what the actionable intelligence in that the comment is. I'm open to finding out, though.
I think there's some takeaway, and that's, of course, labor organizing. But on the electoral level, it's kind of a superficial thing. But I think the reason Bernie had so much success is because he is a working class guy. That's where he comes from. He speaks in that dialect, and if we're going to run people for office, we're better off running people like that rather than, grad degrees.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I'm not putting myself out there as a okay. Oh, they see they want to organize labor, but they see us and your guests tonight as elites. Well, I did labor organizing for a little. I was pretty good at it.
I think that might be more Bill Cole than than MAGA. I think that's doing a little projecting. I mean, people see all kinds of. I mean, Jane is clearly someone who goes into workplaces every day and organizes people.
Yeah. It's worker education. And I mean, obviously, Jane and Adolph aren't going to talk to people. I mean, I don't know. Yes, sure. But I'm also a little tired of, I mean, you got to salt. You got to be salt. You got to infiltrate. Being a salt is when you go into a union to organize people. So it's not like you're not born rank and you're infiltrating. Yeah, you become rank and file. Bernie, absolutely. He gets it. Yeah. And he loves, speaks in that good accent. I will answer your question on Crystal Ball. You guys know that I respond to things. I'm also scrolling up and down. So hold your horses, please. I'm getting to that question. John. Sup with Crystal Ball and her smug rant about no way Trump is a fascist right before Pompeo's joke, by the way. What's up with her? I mean, there's a whole debate over whether or not he's a fascist. And then some people think that it's dangerous to call him a fascist. Some people think it's dangerous to not call him a fascist. I'd have to watch that segment.
Yeah, I didn't see that particular segment, but I think I just don't see how Trump is really that much of an aberration from what we had before. I think that's mostly aesthetic, and the conditions don't exist for fascism, regardless of what may or may not exist.
It was interesting. Matt Christman said this on one of his like explainer podcasts that he did a while ago, that violent fascism doesn't exist because the left isn't strong enough. Yeah,
that's a good point too. Historically it's a response to the left, and they're there's
being powerful. That'd be great. Perhaps before Trump leaves, he'll pardon Snowden, Assange, Manning. I also hate the phenomenon if you're like, yeah, that would be great. People are like, why are you praising Trump? No. Or like, Trump doesn't care about that. He said that he wanted Assange to get the death penalty. Yes, we know that. Same thing with people like, don't work with right wingers. Like, don't try to pass a bill on Yemen with Rand Paul or Matt Gaetz or Mike Lee. It's like, what are you thinking? I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's like the reality exists. We're not legitimizing their other worldviews, but like, you can work with them or not. Oh, interesting. I see. Okay. So this Bill Cole, I love Bernie. My grandfather's MAGA, longtime shiplifter. I thought it was shoplifter. Ship fitter. Longtime ship fitter for Todd's Shipyard. He would never vote Bernie. Running populism on racism, it's easier. Yeah, but but look at these vets who voted Bernie. I just think that like some people, they're not, maybe they'll never change, but I know a lot of people who were Bernie or Trump. And that was not, is that what SALT stands for? I didn't know that. SALT, strong arm labor tactic. That's good. Yeah. I know a lot of people who are Bernie or Trump. And maybe like your grandfather, was that your father? Your grandfather couldn't be moved, but, I don't know. That doesn't mean that like there were people who were Bernie or Trump way more than were like it's interesting. The only people who were Hillary or Trump in 2016 were like Wall Street. Like they preferred them to Bernie, but other people. Anyway. So I think this was a great show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's not true. Look, you can never get, there are some people you can never get, but why the hell wouldn't we try to get them? And why the hell wouldn't we try to get them with good policies like that actually do help them? And they may not get it, but other people will. Dave Rubin writes, Katie, will you come on the Rubin Report to discuss high level ideas? Of course. Of course I will.
Your head might get overwhelmed, just to warn you.
With
all the high level ideas, it can happen.
You have to see Connie Reed, Katie Halper. You have to see David Frum marring the progressive left on. We talked about ranked choice voting when we had Lisa Savage on, who was great. Katie Halper, you have to see David Frum marring the progressive left on Canadian public broadcasting. YouTube search for The Agenda David Frum for free footage. I think it's free on TVO Ontario. Okay, I'll look for that. Maybe we can watch that in my Twitch viewing party. Oh no, that's not Amazon. Oh, if it's we'll see. We'll figure that out.
He's a long history of. There's an old clip of him debating Noam Chomsky in the 80s. I think, yeah, on Canadian TV. Yeah.
Bill Cole. You saw I had Chomsky on, by the way?
Yes, I did. I think I watched most of that. Yeah.
Okay. Bill Cole, I want to get them looking for a way to reframe. I think the only way you can possibly reframe is you say that they're getting played by the racism. You just show what an elitist, not behaviorally, although he is. The thing is, Trump is unabashedly, he's just like, I'm a dick and I made it and I scammed and I made it. Right. So then you can just, again, it's not, I just don't think that I don't understand okay, wait. This is just an important observation that I'm not co-signing or anything, that smart Jewish chicks are hot.
I live with one and can confirm.
Yeah. Ivanka and Katie, I live with myself. Ivanka and Katie should be co-guests on the Rubin Report. They can focus on pitching Ivanka's products. It's true. She wants to sponsor the show. Okay, wait, last thing. What is this? It's easier. Where's the thing? It's easier, Hazy Wave. It's easier to fool people than convince them that they have been fooled. All right, but I just don't know what, like, my schedule, by the way, is Wednesdays at 9 p.m., Sundays at 7 p.m. I don't know. All right, let's then ask your grandfather. I said your father or grandfather, sorry. It's not really Fridays. It's like, it's Sundays at 7 p.m., Wednesdays at 9 p.m. And then every now and then we do an emergency live stream. We did that the other day with Biden's speech. We did a hot take. Grandfather. Okay. Yeah. Ask him about it. All I'm saying is that I know people, we do know what we need to reframe is, and this is related, like we need to make videos. I'm going to have the Gravel, what are they called? The Gravel kids,
Gravel
teens. I'm going to have them on because we need to make videos that explain, for instance, like why it's not the fault. Like I had some guy who's a working class guy, white working class guy I was talking to the other day. And he's like middle-aged and works hard and I was saying something about fight for 15 or $15 minimum wage. He's like, well, then I'm gonna have to pay more for for stuff in the grocery store. And then I was like, I need to break down the minimum wage stuff. Because it's like there's so much propaganda, there's so much divide and conquer, pitting people against each other. So I just think if you show that, and it takes a lot, but yeah. And just showing people how they're getting played is probably the most powerful thing.
Yeah. But even with that, like we're talking about one person, right? We're talking about this one guy's grandpa. We know for a fact, I think it's safe to say millions of people just voted for Trump and a $15 minimum wage in Florida.
Right.
So clearly,
yeah, it's
not, it's always good to explain, but a lot of people get it. They just are not sold on our candidates.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally disagree with this. Oh, good. There's infographics on YouTube to explain it. Okay, cool. Maybe I'll paraphrase them. Okay. Mr. Decide 1. White working class don't vote against their own interests. To say that's deny them agency. Their primary interest is race. No, I don't accept that. Like, I don't accept that. It's a divide and conquer thing. It's an idea. Like, it is a thing they are being sold. Like, yeah. Is there a pay? What is it? What's the thing it calls when you get something? It's what's the payout? No, what is it? It's like payoff. There's a payoff for believing racism, but like, sorry, no. I just think it's such a, I don't even know how to respond to that argument. I just think it's so like meh. Right.
I mean, it's just a losing attitude to,
I mean, it's a losing attitude, but it's also like I don't know if you heard what Jane said. Like there are receipts of people working together, especially around labor organizing, where people get start working together and they see that that race is a divisive issue and that they are, they are voting against their interests. And let's talk about agency. I don't even know. Look, there's ideology. and things are, I mean, there are two issues. One is strategy. Like, I don't know what the hell you want us to do with that. Just like Adolph was saying, it's like an Afro-pessimist, like, it's all screwed. We can't do anything. That's not good organizing or strategy. I disagree with you, but even if I agreed with you, what's the takeaway? Like,
well, the takeaway, yeah, with some, and this is what I was kind of getting to with Levitz, with the Patagonia Democrats.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
We just got to abandon specifically the white working class, which is a complicated term on its own, but and the idea is college-educated whites and people of color. And what we're seeing now is that's not a natural coalition because they don't share common class interests. So the people of color in a lot of these cases who are disproportionately working class are starting to kind of leave the coalition. Many are going over to Trump. Many are not voting. There are enough to get a Biden over the line this time, but long term, this is not a sustainable strategy. And you have to organize people based on their class interest and unite them. And the idea that their primary interest is race. Again, what does that mean?
Yeah. That we don't, first of all, even if this is what I also don't get. Like, even if you think that they're bigots whose agency we have to, like, who we have to blame, right? And vilify or not try to, like, good luck winning elections. Like, good luck fighting against racism with that attitude. It's just a numbers game. Like, it's not that deep. I don't understand. Like, again, if Trumpism are so bad, how about we try to vote against that guy? Unless it's just vindictive and like, fuck these people, I hope they die because they don't have health care and they have like one tooth among their entire family or whatever that shit is. Like, what the hell is the takeaway? I'm sorry if I'm getting angry at you, Mr. Sidewon. I just think it's like, it's so not the right. I don't think it's accurate. And I also don't think it's strategic. Like, that's what kills me. You can have all the contempt you want saying that these people are bigots and irredeemable. Trick them into voting against their racist, alleged racist self-interest. And what the hell look, you think white privilege is better than like healthcare?
Right.
I mean,
it's not. Yeah. So far, in many cases, you can convince people that it is, but it's not because. And if you offered them something else, then
that's the big thing. It's like, obviously, if you don't offer, it's like all the people who you don't offer it to are not getting the exposure. It's like it's skewed results because you're basically saying these people are racist, therefore we can't appeal to them on a class level. Well, we should anyway, because we should be getting them to vote for things that are good for everyone. And second of all, we know that it works, not with everyone. Okay, Bill Cole writes, my grandpa is old enough to have told me about the fights they used to have with the new left hippies in the 60s and 70s. Yes, ideology sucks. Populism works. First of all, you got to read Thomas Frank's book because populism is not actually right wing. It's a co-opting of it. It's always been left wing. And yeah, I'm not denying these, like what the hard, but that's also played up. I mean, Nixon with the hard hat pitting against pitting hard hat construction workers or whatever against hippies. Of course that's there, but like, I don't know.
That's kind of the same thing. It's the inevitability about racial division. This is sort of the same play on that too. It's in the inevitability of cultural or ideological division. If you do enough organizing, then you can get people to see their common interests, and that's what we need to do.
Bill Cole again. All right, Bill Cole. Why don't you talk to Jane though? I'm a person on YouTube. I have a live stream. I'm like openly like a secular Jew, like leftist New Yorker. Like
well, this idea that populism is not an ideology. Why is it not an ideology? Where is the differentiation?
I think you mean it's not intellectual, like it's not like Marxism.
Yeah, okay, but
it kind of is. That's wrong, actually. By the way, that's wrong because you can read The People Know by Thomas Frank or watch the video. I'll put the interview that Matt and I did with him because populism was absolutely like framed, defined, made explicit politically. Invent a new left-wing populism, not one you have to explain, i.e. talk down to them. I don't go around talking. I mean, you don't know what I'm like when I did labor organizing. But thank you for the contribution.
The idea that anybody should, that organizers should not, as Jane said, I would just direct Bill to the interview we just did. But the idea that people should connect with working class people in ways that they are going to understand and be relatable and not alienating is like, I don't know anybody who would disagree with that. So the idea that means we have to somehow give up any other ideological commitments or thinking or anything like that is absurd. Like, I don't see why one would get in the way of the other. And there are a lot of people throughout history, as is happening now again, who are working class and are interested in ideology, or interested in Marx and the labor movement and all sorts of ideologies. Nothing's just outside of ideology.
Okay. Whoops. Katie? Oh, I didn't. Harry Jervis. Do you feel some affinity to Jewish intellectual culture? Yeah. Political. Yeah, I do. Tikkun alum, but I'm not at all religious, so I didn't used to identify as Jewish until I realized that I was. In many ways, guys, hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. So you subscribe, you press subscribe, then you hit the bell. And support me for free. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and hit the bell. Katie is getting hate dollars now. This show is moving up in the world. No, I think Bill and I have a mutual self-respect. You
said he phones in a lot, or he comments in a lot?
I mean, he's just phoning it in right now. He usually has a lot more vitriol. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, maybe you're right, I guess. Let's see. I mean, the other thing is like, yeah, okay. JTVJ says, yeah, I think people need to see racism as behavior, not personality types. It's easier when you don't pigeonhole someone as racist rather than pointing at behavior as being racist. I think also a lot of racism that we need to talk about is the structural stuff, which focusing on individual bigoted attitudes. I mean, let's do both, but that is exactly why, I sound like a broken record, but Biden and all of them talking about structural racism and then not getting behind things like Medicare for all. They call out the structural racism. They call out how COVID disproportionately affects people of color. And then they get in the way of the thing that can actually help them. So anyway, let's see. It is my, hold on, let's see. Where was it? What was I saying? Okay, it is Vivian writes, it is my belief that the majority of persons that vote for Trump are afraid of the power shift towards non-white folks in the U.S. Okay, let's say that's true, which I don't know about the majority. I think that there's a lot of just like rich people who have tax interests. But if that's true, what do we do about that? That's my question. Do we want, Vivian writes that. Like, so my question is, do we, because of that, not try to get people to fight for, organize around, fight for 15, Medicare for all?
And again, I think something.
Oh, I got to read this. Okay, Brad's going to be mad at me. Brad and Kelly are going to be mad at me because we're not supposed to read comments about looks, but I can't. Thanks for the show. I like to see you get worked up. You are hot. Drops the mic. I had to read it because I am beholden to my donor base, to my YouTube donor base.
How much is he? This is kind of like an OnlyFans in a way.
Someone said that, and I didn't know what that meant.
Oh,
a couple. Yeah.
If you Google it, you'll get it.
Yeah. Anyway, someone's writing AO. I can't shame. Okay, we'll work on a. Yeah, this is true. Actually, that's the J Smooth racist. You did something racist. You weren't. Not you are racist. He said it's better conversation to get into. I agree. The problem is so many people like getting their like pure, politically purist rocks off by chiding people. Who the hell was it who said Utopia scold or something? It was really good. Anyway, but this is a thing about it. If you actually want to, hold on, kick bell button hard, crack it like Liberty Bell. I like that. Hold on one second. Where's that comment that someone just wrote? Okay, here we go. No, hold on. Thank Brad sent it. Okay, let's see. Brian June said, a chunk of white working class is never coming back to the Dems, but I think that focusing on the flaws of voters lets the party off the hook for not being better. I think that's true. I also think like Mehdi Hassan, with whom I disagree quite a bit, thinks that, there's a lot of irredeemable racists, but he still thinks that we should be fighting for those things. I mean, that's like a no-brainer. I guess the question is how much we pitch these people. But again, I don't get it. Like, you fight, elections are about winning.
Yeah, this whole conversation is premised around the idea that anyone is pitching people on the basis of their racism or trying to play to that, and Bernie never did that. AOC doesn't do that. Basically, no. Oh my God.
Is socialism possible at all in a multiracial country? See Cuba. I mean, now everyone's going to be like, that's not socialism. It's blah, 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 blah. See Cuba, though. Not only was it multiracial, but the treatment of Black people in Cuba improved. They went from having they did have as they would say in Spanish, a word we're not allowed to say, but it starts with an M. They did have a president who couldn't enter certain countries. I mean, so they did have that, which was good, but he also couldn't enter like some of the country clubs in Cuba. So yeah, I don't get that. Like, it's Sweden, they're all white, that's why we have that?
Yeah, and it's just never been explained to me what about multiracial, like, how many races does it become where you can't have socialism? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Why that makes any difference? What the race is of the people of the country, whether or not they have what a kind of economic system they have. That's a determinist. That's a racial determinist way of thinking. Yeah,
and it just makes it that much more necessary. Again, like, all the more reason to campaign on these issues. All the more reason. Look, if people are only presented with race-based race-based identities or communities, if they're presented with racist ideology, racist like talking points, and there's nothing there to combat that, of course they're going to stay in that area.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer, no matter what you think, honestly. David Leftfield thought that Kelly gave a shout out to bell bottoms because she talked about the bell. Yeah. Also, what's the other thing I was gonna say? I'm sad. I ran out of. I'm all done with Borgen. The show. Yeah. Anders, what's your ethnic background again?
Norwegian and Irish.
Okay. I feel like you combine. Yeah. So you're Nordic, right?
Mm-hmm. North Atlantic. Yep.
Yeah. It's Cuba sent nurses and doctors to Italy to help them fight COVID. I gotta have someone on to talk about Cuba. They did that. They have sent them to lots of countries in the Caribbean and all around. They do pretty good stuff. Foreign policy wise. Shout out to bell bottoms, everyone. They're back. Kelly Carey says that. Cool. So anyway, I'm sad because I'm done with that. Oh, this is a good point. Hold on. Yeah, shout out to Kelly. Hold on. This is a good point. Finish Anders. Hold on. Finish him. That's so violent. Hold on. What the fuck? Oh, liking and subbing from the Philippines. Thanks for the U.S. political progressive left.
Thanks for watching.
And populism education. I was just going to say something. Someone wrote, and I can't remember where it was, but I'm sorry, I missed it. If you wrote it and you want to remind me now, do that. Oh, shout out to Anders Lee. Pod Damn is a great show.
Thank you.
True. Katie Phantomus Fanto writes, Katie only fans. Bernie's speeches on endless loop. True facts. What else? Thanks, Fantomas. Okay. You know what? I'm so tired of this stuff. All right. Like, Reed needs to be tossed in the same bin as Chomsky, always with the voting Dem neoliberal enablers. Come on. There's a very good argument to be made to voting against Trump. I'm sorry. And you know what? People can make that argument without being dumb neoliberal shills.
Yeah. Agreed.
Also, honestly, how these guys have done a lot. Don't be vote shamers in the opposite way.
Adolph Reed also voted for Nader in 2000 and wrote an essay at the time talking about the limitations of what he thought that movement was and what that candidacy was. And I think a lot of what he said turned out to be true.
Yeah.
So I would direct people there.
Yeah, I would direct people there. Exactly. Yeah. What did I highlight? Did I read that already? Yeah, that's the one I was. Oh no, I didn't read that. Sorry. I think he's trying it because I ignored this, not intentionally, but it's very resourceful because I ignored it. So now he paid some money and he addressed Anders Lee because he's probably like, Katie won't address it. But I have some thoughts on this. But why don't we let you do it?
What are my opinions on Trump starting a military coup? Is it possible? I guess it's possible, but you would need a pretty big faction of the military to be on board, and it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. It seems like the chain of command is not happy with Trump, and I don't see them turning on what their constitutional obligations are.
Yeah, they're awful. Hold on. There's no buy-in from the military, Lumpia Logic says. Yeah. Okay, and then Connie Reed, Katie Halper, ignore the negative comments. You still have lots of good folks in the chat. The video with the Greek leftist politician named Yanis Varoufakis talks about populism. When I respond to them, I'm not just it's because I think that it's important to respond to. So Kelly was telling me not to scream at viewers. Try not to scream at the viewers, maybe.
They like it, right? They like a little,
yeah. That's what you see is what you get. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
I need to, yeah. What were you saying? Sorry.
Oh, I was actually just talking about this guy, this today with Giannis and populism. Have you heard his shtick about it?
Is it a recent shtick or
it's a long-standing shtick where he'll basically say, in his estimation, populism is inherently right wing, and he doesn't feel the need to really explain that. And that's, I feel like this can be said of any political term, socialism, liberalism, conservatism, fascism. They're all broad and have different connotations and different meanings. So to say, as he says, populism is inherently right wing. It's based on what? This definition that you're constructing right here, and and I don't know. It seems sort of pointless and kind of to be totally blunt, like a kind of an excuse for why his party is not very popular.
Oh, I got it. Well, he should have a debate with. I'll have him on to debate Thomas Frank.
Yeah.
Does anyone have Giannis's contact info? If you do, then tell me your Twitter handle, and then I'll follow you, and then I'll DM you. I think I can get it. I shouldn't crowdsource. We were in contact for a while ago, and I can't remember who the person is. Who the contact was. Let's see. Okay. Another thing from this take. Fact is, the white supremacists in the U.S. are on the march to create a nation, not country, a group of people bound by common culture, beliefs, and primarily bonds of blood. Dun, dun, dun. I shouldn't joke about that as a Jew. I shouldn't dismiss that. But look, if that's true, okay, and then what? Now what? What is the actionable? I love saying that, actionable intelligence.
Yeah. Right. We feel like we need to counter that with a narrative of our own that's not based on blood and race essentialism.
Yeah. What is it? What does it say? Blood and what? Bound of blood?
Something like that.
Bonds of blood. We are offering. Anyone have David Harvey's contact info? Hit me up. Here we got someone with Chomsky. Exactly. Chris Colin Lopez. responding to negative comments allows one to shut them down when you have the arguments and facts on your side. That is why I believe we shouldn't deplatform people or censor, instead expose them. Yeah. But I don't want to overly I don't think the people in my chat are my enemies. I'm not exposing them. I think I'm pushing back. Okay. So, and yeah, we all have different roles to play. That's true. Like intellectuals have one role. Oh, that's a good point, actually. Matt Faint Design Co. Yeah. But Varoufakis is talking about it, populism from a European perspective, though. Euros really don't think about it in terms of the Kansas Capitol.
Well, read David Broder. He's written about this. Chantal Mouffe has written about this. There can be populism can be construed in a left-wing direction, and Varoufakis is being disingenuous when he plays these little word games.
Wow. Well, good luck with me having on now. I'm just kidding.
Sorry. You can blame me.
I'll cut that
and
out.
Then, and then I'll
debate him. Goose Fiorafana, what do y'all think of Proposition?
No, I would probably lose in a debate.
California. Obviously, we don't like Prop 22. It's awful. Okay, Mike. Bill Cole picks up the mic. Populism is surely right wing now in the world. Thomas Frank, I'll read closely. Katie, you are very authentic. You should tell us. Yeah, but I don't have it in front. Okay. All right. So, that's nice. Kelly, you'll like this. Matt Farr. You'll go far in this world. Sorry. Love you, Katie, and you have one of the least toxic chats. I should get a Webby Award for that.
Yeah.
It's, what'd you say?
That's saying something.
That's saying something, yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, Prop 22 is awful. I should have on what did Anders say about Yanis? He called him disingenuous.
That may have been a little I just disagree with him. I don't know what
he meant to say disagreed with.
Yes.
And he said disingenuous. You see, it sounds there's a lot of overlap.
It's funny if we were actually to be, that would be hilarious if I was in a debate with Yanis Varoufakis, because that would be the most out of my depth, I think.
The Minister of Economics?
Yes. It should not happen.
Don't sell yourself short. Yeah.
It would be, I would do it. It would not go well.
Right. Phantasma Fonto, I'm farthest left tonight. Tips, David Icke hat. I don't really get that. David Icke is the guy who talks about like lizard people, right?
Yeah, David.
I should get him on.
He's British, right?
I think so. All right. Oh, thank you. I coined a new word tonight. Katie, you're my favorite authoritarian feminist. All right. At least top 5, right? I'm screenshotting that. Damn it. Okay. Well, guys, thank you. This has been great. I always Jewish goodbye my shows. I told this a couple weeks. I don't remember my last show. Do you know what a Jewish goodbye is, Anders?
No, what's that?
Well, do you know what an Irish goodbye is?
I do know an Irish goodbye.
An Irish goodbye is when you leave without saying goodbye, right?
Yep.
A Jewish goodbye is when you say goodbye without leaving. So I got to stop doing that. God, my forehead's so shiny. I got to put better whatever on. All right. Bye, everyone. See you Sunday. Okay. And for those who don't know, maybe I'll put it in my YouTube banners as of now before it blow up, become daily, twice a day.
Wow.
It is Wednesdays at 9 p.m. I'm just kidding. Wednesday at 9 p.m., Sundays at 7 p.m. Hey, anyone out there want to do a water drinking challenge?
A water drinking challenge?
I don't drink enough water. And so I thought I would try to Kelly told me about water drinking challenges. She wasn't encouraging me. Don't blame her. But I was like, why don't I just do that? I don't know what time, but I need to drink what? I need to drink. How much water are you supposed to drink every day?
2 bottles, something like that.
2, what size bottles?
Bottle.
Like a baby bottle?
This much? I don't know.
8 glasses. I don't even know what that means. But
okay.
Either way, I don't do enough. So let's see. I think I should drink how many of these? Kelly, you must know this answer, right? This is 16.9 fluid ounces. How many ounces am I supposed to have? Is a human supposed to have? Let's see. 8 gallons. Okay. How many gallons? How many of these would be 8 gallons? If it's, wait, I got better info for you. It is, where did it just say that? Oh no, it doesn't tell me gallons. It tells me the ounces and milliliters and PT. I don't even know what that is. Well, how many of these would have drink a half ounce of water for every pound you weigh? I don't even know. I don't. All right. Well, how many of these would be 8 gallons? Just tell me. Not 8 gallons. Okay. 8 glasses. Right. How many glasses are in it? You know what? I'll find this out on my own. This is why the water challenge is so important, because it's hard stuff to do. All right. I'm sorry I said 8 gallons. I'm really tired. And yeah, I know it's ounces. It's not gallons. But no, it's not ounces, because you're not supposed to have 8, whatever, 8 cups. I don't know how many ounces that is. So I'm going to, so is this, Brian June, is this a store-bought water? If so, drink 5 of these. Okay. I'm going to, why not do this? See, when I don't know what to, look, here's the problem. This is a water bottle and this is a water bottle. That's a problem, and it's not okay, and it's a problem, and we have to talk about it. I mean, I have a huge, like, Fuji. You know what I like? My favorite kind of water. It's really terrible because it's expensive, but it is my favorite, which is Evian.
Oh, really? Fancy.
Katie, get 532. Anyway, I know it's carbonated, but there's water that comes in that size. So I'm going to do it. I don't know how. I just need to make sure that I 30 ounces a day. Okay. I need to make sure I drink more water. So I was like, why don't I get on, you know, oh, wow. Spelled backwards. It's naive. Damn. Where is it? Hold on. All right, fine. I won't, you don't want me to, all right. You know what? I'll just fill up something with spelled backwards. It's naive. It is, that doesn't make it any less good. I will not, I have access to a water filter in a refrigerator. So I'll just fill that up. But I still think it would be helpful to me. And if you guys want to do it too, we get on and we drink water together. No, that's not true. Your body tells you how much water to drink. If you're thirsty, you should drink. That's it. I don't think that's true. Because also I'm kind of like, sometimes I'm a little lazy. Yeah. Okay. So I think I have, and then, hey, how about this? You want to do, we could do the water challenge, and then you guys know what Morning Pages is?
Yeah, from
the Artist Way?
Yeah.
Let's do that too. What do you think? I mean, you don't have to. I'm just thinking, and then I will, wait, hold on. That is so true. That is so not true. Wait, face mirror. That is so not true. Do the water challenge, Hingy. What's the thing that's not true? Oh, that you don't, you're siding with me, right? That you can't. Yeah, your body gets used to no water, I'm sure. Yeah, I do sweat. You don't have to worry about it, Garden Gnome. I'm a sweater. Part of the value of drinking water is when you excrete it, you purge toxins. Make sure to sweat. I mean, toxins is a very overly used word, and I have a public health friend who can come on to talk about this. But yeah, that's what I was thinking, actually. Who said that? Hold on. Wait, where is that? Yes, exactly. Pluto writes, if you are feeling thirsty, you are already dehydrated. You should be preventing thirst, not chasing it. Exactly. I don't want to be a chaser anymore. I want to be a preventer. So I'm going to do that. And then Jimmy Dorm does Morning Pages every day. Yeah, I was doing it. And I think that we need to build an accountability community. Okay, this is good advice. Drink them all before, from P. Wayne Smith, drink them all before 2 p.m. so you won't interrupt your sleep. That's true. Hafa Ball says, just leave water bowls around your house as a reminder. Well, the dogs have water bowls. So, Right. You should be peeing close to clear, people say. Buy a drinking helmet with straws and wear it. What does that look like? I should do that. That would be good, right? Anders got that old voice but young face. He does a very reassuring voice, I would say.
Thank you.
Also, oh, nice. Phil Winter goes, OMG, a gallon a day is ridiculous. Shit. A gallon a day is ridiculous. But that only drink when you're thirsty thing will have you aging like Bill Clinton. Yes.
What is it? Aging like Bill Clinton, as in you look like you've had a lot of Botox?
And you're a little shaky, right? Morning pages. So that's what we could do. That's cute. We could do a morning pages and like, I don't know, morning pages, morning headlines. We do both or something. Accountability community. It's not funny. It's true. Morning pages, when you write, it's from this book called The Artist's Way, and you write 3 pages by hand first thing. And wait, what is this? I drink coffee and maybe 1 glass of water at dinner. You drink coffee at dinner? 1 bottle when I work out. I have noticed that the older I get, the more I will probably need to drink of water, you're saying. All right. I will have Anders back. Anyway. I did a morning and evening headlines every day, but you know that. Oh, right. You do. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Everyone follow independent left.news. All right. All right. Yeah, let's do it. So I'm not sure when we're going to do it, but I want to wake up, have some coffee, and do my morning pages, and then I'll drink water. Does that sound good? Some people say it's really good to have, oh, interesting. Hold on. 1 gallon, dude. You will die if you drink 8 gallons. That's from Kelly. PT is pint. You get a special water thing. Everyone gets this bottle like she has, so that you can always have the water and know how much you've had. 1 gallon a day for 30 days. That's the challenge, guys. Here's what we're doing. 1 gallon a day for 30 days. Who's with me? But we got to do it like I have a lot first thing. Okay, I'll work up to, if you guys think 1 gallon is too much, fine, then we'll do half. I mean, half a gallon, yeah. All right. All right. Coffee is more dehydrating. Yes. Okay. Coffee is more dehydrating than alcohol. If you drink cocktails or beer, straight booze is more dehydrating, of course. Well, I'm a coffee addict and I just can't quit it right now. And it's not iced coffee is dehydrating. I really like it. Iced coffee is super dehydrating as well. Of course, the ice helps if you actually drink it all. You know, that's true, though. I don't usually drink the ice. I got to figure that out. I'll do it. 1 gallon every day for 30 days. You will be ready for a colonoscopy. Well, I don't know if that's... All right. So, yeah, exactly. I don't have to quit. I just need to drink more water. All right. Oh, Jesus Christ. Wait, I drink about a gallon and change a day since the towers fell? What does that mean, since the towers fell?
9/11.
I know, but what does that have to do with it?
It's the marking of place and time.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I got to do it early on. I think this is really going to change my life, honestly. Maybe not in any way except for my, whatever.
Water, it's great. Yeah.
It's great. Do you drink enough water?
I drink a lot of water, yeah. I'm actually jonesing for some right now. I'm far away from my Brita.
Oh, no. You're going through withdrawal?
Withdrawal, yeah.
Red Sea Socialist says, being wrong is not failure. It's an opportunity to elevate your knowledge. Yeah, it's true. All right. Okay. Well, go to Twitch, drink water, and yeah, maybe I should go to Twitch. Go to Twitch, drink water, and watch Waterworld. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Everyone follow Anders Lee. Everyone live your best life. That is a kind of funny quote. I think this is totally going to change my life, except maybe it won't. I think that's a good commentary on life. What's bone apple teeth? Anyone know what that is? I don't even know what's bone apple teeth. Is that like bone apple teeth? That is so funny. All right. Drink water with apple cider vinegar, cayenne, honey. I actually like that. That's like the Beyonce diet. All right. Bye again, everyone. I put cayenne and cinnamon in my coffee. All right. I will see you guys later.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Seacrest out.